kababayan, nagpapasalamat po kami sa kaloob ninyong panibagong araw na mayroon dalang pag-asa. Humaharap ang sambayanan sa matinding pagsubok at ang tanging naming pinaghahawakan ay ang inyong pangakong kaligtasan. Ama namin, idinudulog po namin ang kapanatagan ng loob ng mga kababayan naming nagdurusa dahil sa pandemya. Sa mga nawalan ng mahal sa buhay, sa kawalan ng trabaho, at sa mga patuloy na nakikipagsapalaran sa araw-araw. Ipinagdarasal po namin na gabayan ninyo ang mga pinuno ng bansa, kabilang na ang kamarang ito, naway lingapi ng buong pagkasi ang bayan bago ang sarili. Bigyan po ninyo kami ng lakas ng katawan at kaliwanagan ng isip upang kami makapaglingkod ayon sa inyong mga turo. At gawin po ninyo kaming instrumento tungo sa muling pagbangon ng bansa. Ang lahat ng ito ay hinihiling namin sa ngalan ni Kristong Jesus sa aming tagapagligtas. Amen.
Amen. The Secretary will please call the roll.
Roll call of members, the Honorable Senators Angara, Binay,
Present.
Cayetano, de Lima, de la Rosa,
Present.
Filon,
Present.
Gatchalian, Go,
Present.
Gordon,
Present.
Antiveros, Lacson, Lapid, Marcos, Pacquiao,
Present.
Pangilinan,
Present, diba?
Pimentel III, Ho, Recto,
Present.
Revilla,
Present.
Tolentino, Villanueva,
Present.
Villar,
Present.
Zubiri, Senate President Soto III.
Yes, present. Okay.
Zubiri, positive.
Pangilinan present.
With 4 senators physically present and 18 senators virtually present, 22. The chair declares the presence of a quorum. Majority Leader.
Thank you, Mr. President. Mr. President, I move that we defer the approval of the journal of the first session Monday, July 27, 2020 to a later hour. I so move.
All right. Any objection? Hearing none, so deferred.
Mr. President, in our agenda, we have several third reading measures. Before we take up the reference to business and other matters, with the permission of the body, I move that we vote on third reading on these measures, Mr. President. Mr. President,
Yes.
for the record, all of them had been distributed to the members complying with the 3-day rule of the Constitution for all the, these are for all the measures, Mr. President. So with that, I move that we vote on third reading, Senate Bill number 1564. I so move, Mr. President.
Any objection? Hearing none. Motion is approved. The Secretary will read the title of the measure and conduct a roll call vote.
Senator.
Senate Bill number 1564, an act providing for a COVID-19 response and recovery interventions and providing mechanisms to accelerate the recovery and bolster the resiliency of the Philippine economy, providing funds therefore and for other purposes. Roll call vote to Honorable Senators Angara, Binay, Cayetano, de Lima, de la Rosa, Trilon,
Yes.
Gatchalian, Gordon, Antiveros, Lacson, Lapid, Marcos,
Yes.
Pacquiao,
Yes.
No, I vote no. Pangilinan votes no.
Pimentel III.
Yes.
Poe.
Yes.
Recto. Revilla. Tolentino. Villanueva.
Yes, yes.
Villar.
Yes.
Senate President Soto III.
Zubiri, yes, ha? Zubiri, yes.
Mr. President. President.
Senator,
Just a brief manifestation, if possible, Mr. President.
after we count the votes,
Okay, thank you.
18 affirmative votes, 1 negative vote. Senate Bill 1564 is approved on third reading.
Mr. President, I believe some of our colleagues would like to explain their vote. May we recognize Senators Recto, Pangilinan, Angara, and Villanueva, as well as Amy Marcos, Senator Amy Marcos.
Senator Sani Angara was asking for the floor earlier, so
I was,
Yield, Mr. President, I can yield. I don't have to be first.
Yeah. I was messaged by Senator Angara, Mr. President, Senator Recto, that he be
Sorry.
first.
I
but,
yield, Mr. President. I yield the floor.
yes, all right. It's the call of the majority leader.
Thank you,
Senator
Mr.
Recto.
President.
Thank you very much, Mr. President, and thank you to our very positive majority floor leader. Mr. President, today we hit the ground running as befits the call of the times. The virus may be faster than the bureaucracy, but it should not be able to outrun this Senate. We're passing the bill that bears the Chamber's signature enterprise of being thorough, as shown by its many provisions. Unfortunately, though our ideas on how to help our people are boundless, they are limited by the money to implement them. Revenues have always been a cap to dreams. We have asked vigorously for a higher amount so that more jobless people can be given relief, more businesses can be rescued, more OFWs can be repatriated, and more resources can be spent to our medical frontliners. But the executive has put a lid on how much we can appropriate, even if we had told them that whether the patient is one individual or 100 million, giving them only a small portion of the medicine required will be money wasted on the sick who will not be cured. I have doubts on the therapeutic potency of this bill. I have always maintained that we have to go fast and go big. This pandemic is not a flu which can be starved. If we need to borrow more, let us do it. Our debt numbers are far from reaching the red line. And what should the latter be? If it is a debt to ratio of 55%, this is still way below the typical 70% prudential limit. The orthodoxy that our deficit to GDP should not break past 9% has no basis. The sky will not fall if we reach 9% or even 10%, for as long as it is a one-shot deal and not end up a fiscal habit. As parents who would borrow money to save an ill child, then as leaders, we should have the mettle to do the same to save a sick nation. So this bill is a product of compromise with a veto-threatening executive. We have been told that the peso more than the ceiling they have set, and this bill, like a COVID patient in distress, will be dead on arrival on the president's desk. When you are up against accountants who know the price of everything, but the value of nothing, yet hold the key to the vault, you must know when to raise the white flag, to retreat so you can fight another day. So, Mr. President, yes, I will vote for this bill based on their assurance that if the amounts will be found wanting, they will ask for more. In other words, this is petty cash which can be replenished. And my second reason is that we are about to enter the budget season. So this will give us a better view of a broader expenditure picture. For purposes of transparency, which is the fourth important T, after testing, tracing, and treatment in the fight against COVID-19, let me go through expenses this bill authorizes. Its total price tag will be anywhere between 140 to 157 billion. Sounds impressive if it were a household budget, but small for a nation fighting an existential threat. For context, let me state that 140 is what the government spends in 13 days. On personal services alone, it is equivalent to our payroll and pension expenses for 43 days. But if lockdown has reduced to a trickle, our revenue taps because the fiesta season went by without barrios downing beer by the truckloads, or the trucks having been grounded, have not been filling their gas tanks, and malls, the giant suction machine of taxes, have been closed, then what we cannot raise in taxes, we must offset in borrowings. Mr. President, let me give you a breakdown. 10 billion for testing and extraction kits, supplies, materials, reagents for COVID-19 testing, and boosting the capacity of the DOH. 15 billion for a cash for work program in communities to include contact tracing. 17 billion in assistance to displaced workers or employees. 50 billion in capital infusion to the following: 5 billion to the Philippine Guarantee Corporation, 30 billion to Land Bank of the Philippines, and 15 billion to the Development Bank of the Philippines. Hopefully, these GFIs will in turn lend them to businesses in distress. 17 billion for direct cash subsidy, interest-free loans, and other forms of assistance to farmers, fishermen, livestock raisers, and other agricultural enterprises under the canopy of the plant programs. 17 billion for the Department of Transportation to assist transportation workers who have lost their jobs and for the development of a bicycle infrastructure from dedicated lanes to units to be distributed. 10 billion for workers in tourism enterprises, which were the first to be directly and severely hit by the pandemic. These people who are heavy contributors to the economy deserve this new tagline: more funds in the Philippine tourism sector. 3 billion to transform state universities into smart and ICT boosted campuses. Because while schools can be physically locked down, learning should not be. And 1 billion for technical and vocational courses of TESDA for technicians to retool their skills to survive in the changed manpower landscape of the new normal. But this bill should not be appreciated merely for the provisions that carry peso signs. It has non-monetary mandates which are important as well. If this were a Spanish-era letras y figuras painting, the words are as vital as the figures. To name a few, the exemption from rigid procurement processes of goods and services essential in the pandemic fight, from medicine to rooms for our tired frontliners. Directing businesses to prioritize contracts critical for the pandemic response. Authorizing alternative working arrangements for public sector employees. Moving back statutory deadlines for filing and submission of public documents. The payment of taxes, fees, and other charges required by law. And directing banks and lending institutions, utility companies, and real estate lessors to grant a grace period for payment of loans, utility bills, and rent. And there are many more in the fine print of this bill that will have a large beneficial impact on our people. Mr. President, while this bill provides for the common welfare during these trying times, it cannot, however, legislate common sense into those who will implement it, as well as other laws. It cannot, for example, convince those who continue to refuse partners in bed at night to ride pillion in motorbikes in the morning. It also cannot turbocharge the allotment, obligation, and disbursement of funds appropriated herein. If we cannot flatten the pandemic curve, can we not at least be behind the spending curve? I have often said that in normal times, budget delayed is development denied. Today, such delay is fatal. With this reminder, Mr. President, I vote yes. Thank you, Mr. President.
Thank you, the President Pro Tem, Senator Recto. Who is next, Majority Leader?
We can call Senator Kiko Pangilinan, please, Mr. President.
Senator Pangilinan, next. Oh, by the way, correction, there were 22 affirmative votes and only 1 negative vote. Senator Pangilinan.
Senator Kiko, you're on mute. My
Oh.
apologies. Yeah.
Sorry. Thank you, Mr. President. Thank you, Majority Leader. It is with regret that I have to vote no on this measure. I was listening to Senator Recto, and all the more I'm convinced that a no vote has basis. Mr. President, it has been 7 weeks after this chamber approved on second reading the Bayanihan 2. Extremely disturbing news of alleged massive corruption 7 weeks after in PhilHealth hit the country's news headlines. In the days to come, I understand hearings will be conducted to look into these serious allegations of misuse of COVID-related funding right in the middle of the pandemic. Today, nearly 2 months after the government imposed a May 30 deadline to achieve 30,000 tests daily, we have failed to meet that target with over 10,000 backlog cases as of today. Today, nearly 5 months after March 15, the lockdown, and after experiencing the longest community quarantine all over the world, the total number of COVID cases continues to rise, with 82,040 cases and 1,657 new confirmed cases and deaths now nearing 2,000 as of July 27, 2020. In contrast, Thailand to date has 3,292 cases. Malaysia has 8,897 cases, and Vietnam has 420 cases. The difference in the numbers is glaring and disappointing. Clearly, compared to all other countries in the region, save for Indonesia, whose population is nearly 3 times larger than ours, we have failed to stop the spread of the disease and have been unable to meet our own imposed targets and deadlines for mass testing, contact tracing, and isolation. The Senate last April correctly called on the resignation of Secretary Duque for his failure in leadership. Sadly, his incompetence and worse, his being linked to corruption has been condoned and has been left unpunished. I'm afraid, Mr. President, that unless Secretary Duque is fired or is forced to step down as chairperson of the IATF, the country will only see more incompetence and more corruption issues hounding the government's efforts in addressing the pandemic. It must be underscored, Mr. President, that a review of the provisions of Bayanihan 2 that we just approved on third reading will show that of the first 26 interventions listed by the law in Section 3 as necessary to effectively combat the pandemic, 13 or half of these needed interventions are placed on the shoulders of the DOH. I'm afraid that under the mediocre leadership displayed consistently since the pandemic hit us, none of these 13 interventions will be met or achieved, and billions of funds will be spent yet again without our achieving the results necessary to manage the spread of the disease effectively. Without an effective management of the spread of the disease, Mr. President, we will be unable to reopen the economy. And in failing to reopen the economy due to the failure of the DOH to bring COVID to manageable levels, then our economic recovery will be elusive and widespread hunger and joblessness will persist. In addition to the poor performance, Mr. President, I believe the amount of 160 billion is inadequate to address the economic losses we are now facing. To be fair, the Senate, through Senator Angara, proposed a much higher amount in the original committee report, but this was not what the Executive Department had in mind. Originally, the Senate committee report recommended the amount of 236 billion. It is also my belief, and I know this is shared by several other colleagues, that to be able to face what is arguably the most serious health and economic crisis since World War II, it will require more than just 160 billion worth of government funds. And as Senator Recto puts it, 13 days of salaries for our workers is worth 160 billion pesos. This is another concern regarding the impact of such an amount in the effort to revive the trillion peso economy or the losses in trillions of pesos and provide meaningful assistance to those distressed. We vote no to additional funding specified in Bayanihan 2 because we believe that Secretary Duque ought to be fired before billions more are allowed to be released to the DOH. We must hold him, the country's top health official and the chairperson of the IATF, to account for the continuing spread of the disease among Filipinos. Since the first COVID foreigner patient was discovered 7 months ago, The test scores on the outcome of the Philippine COVID response indicate failure. In terms of percentage of active cases, we are the worst among Asian countries, 65%. Singapore, in contrast, is 8.8%, while Thailand is 3.5%. In terms of deaths per million population, ours is one of the worst, 17. Singapore is 5, and Thailand, 0.8. In terms of percentage of recovered, among the worst among Asian countries, 32.1% recovered. Singapore has 91.2% recovery, and Thailand has 94.85% recovery. Numbers do not lie, Mr. President. All indicators point to a dismal, mediocre performance. Our people are hungry. Millions are jobless. All are worried about the future because, again, almost 7 months after the first imported case of COVID, with what is said to be the longest lockdown in the world, the government still does not have a well-defined, clearly spelled out, and efficient system for mass testing, contact tracing, and isolation. Nanghihingalo ang ating ekonomiya dahil sa palpak, makupad at kulang na pagtugon sa pandemya. Ang kailangan natin ay magaling, mapag-aruga at matinong doktor para maayos natin, masolusyonan natin ang magkakambal na sakit ng COVID at kurakot na nakaharap ng bayan natin. Hindi natin kailangan ng mas marami pang pulis, ng mas marami pang militar. Hindi natin kinakailangan ang kamay na bakal. When the Senate voted on Bayanihan 1, this representation stressed that our expression of a yes vote with serious reservations comes with both a warning and an admonition that the implementers of the law, that our people deserve better from them. In view of the foregoing, we vote no to Bayanihan 2. We vote no because we refuse to tolerate mediocrity, incompetence, and yes, corruption. For Secretary Duque's failure to keep infections down and to flatten the curve, and his failure to stem corruption and to prevent the misuse of public funds meant to address the COVID pandemic, we vote no to additional funding specified in Bayanihan 2. We cannot allow this mediocrity in leadership to further have a hand in billions of pesos worth of public funds, and we cannot allow incompetence in the highest levels to continue to hold sway and make decisions urgently needed to stave off further economic losses now reaching over 1 trillion pesos. For the sake of the nation's health and to prevent the total collapse of the nation's economy, Duque has to go. The nation deserves better. For this, again, it is with regret that I vote no. Thank you, Mr. President. Thank you, Majority Leader.
Thank you, Senator Pangilinan. Majority Leader, who's next?
Mr. President, we recognize the chairman of the committee, Senator Sunny Angara, after which Senator Joel Villanueva and Senator Amy Marcos.
Senator Sani Angara, Chairman of Committee on Finance, recognized.
Thank you, Mr. President. Thank you, Majority Leader. Thank you. I just want to thank all of our colleagues, both from the majority and the minority, because they worked very hard on this measure. We worked overtime late into the evening. So salamat po sa kanilang lahat. And thank you for their comments and inputs. I'd particularly like to thank the leadership, of course. Senate President Soto has been pushing us and been our driving force since Bayanihan 1, and it continues to this day. And of course, I'd like to mention also Senator Pia for helping me defend the measure. Senator Amy also for helping co-chair during the committee hearings. I'd like to also thank the executive agencies, Mr. President, because despite the pandemic, a lot of them sent directors or ASECs or USECs to represent the agency and give us inputs in real time. And in particular, I'd like to thank my staff and your staffs and the LBMRO or the Budget Office, because I just like to emphasize how hard they worked we had many rounds of amendments, Mr. President, not just the single round of amendments that we have in our rules, but many rounds in order to come up with a nice measure. And I'd like to acknowledge the efforts of Attorney Doblon, Irene, and all the other members of the LBMRO, many of whom slept in the office actually overnight, not known to many. So thank you once again to our colleagues. And I have been in receipt, or our office has been in receipt of many other proposals. And because we had already passed it on second reading, we will consider these. We assure our colleagues and our counterparts in the executive branch that we will consider these in the during the BICAM with the House once the House approves their measure on second and third reading. Once again, maraming pong salamat mga kasama. Thank you, Mr. President.
Senator Villanueva, Mr. President.
Senator Joel Villanueva is recognized.
Thank you, Mr. President. Thank you, Mr. Majority Floor Leader. The COVID-19 pandemic has posed tremendous threats to the sectors of labor and education. It has caused loss of millions of jobs locally and abroad and continues to put our frontliners and workers at risk of infection. It has also interrupted the education of roughly about 35 million students. Kaya ang gusto po natin na sana makarating tayong lahat sa finish line, na ligtas sa sakit, may trabaho, at yung mga mag-aaral po natin ay hindi mangangamote dahil hindi makasabay sa pag-aaral under the new normal. However, as already aired by my colleagues, my fellow senators, we are afraid that the 140 billion peso fund provided by the Department of Finance may be inadequate, or should I say definitely inadequate. Ang analogy nga po natin, Mr. President, kung gusto natin ng recovery, hindi po pwede yung ambu bag lang o ambulance bag lang ang meron po tayo. Dapat mechanical ventilator. Marami na po tayo yung isinakripisyo laban sa COVID, kaya hindi po maaari na ang bawat isang hakbang pasulong ay may kasabay ding dalawang paatras na hakbang. We all believe that we need to build back better by recovering our momentum as a growing nation. And ito pong panukalang batas na ito at ating ginawang batas ngayong araw na ito ay makakatulong. Ito po ang aking pananaw. At nagpapasalamat tayo, of course, sa ating Chairman Sani Angara, for supporting all of our amendments. No, I remember yung pong initiative for allocation ng 15 billion pesos for cash for work programs and 17 billion unemployment or involuntary separation assistance to workers, which includes freelancers, OFWs, part-time faculty in private and public tertiary education institutions, and workers in critical sectors. Malaking bagay po ito, Ginoong Pangulo. We also would like to thank our chair for accommodating yung amendment natin in emphasizing the need to immediately conduct tracing of the contacts of confirmed, probable, and suspected COVID-19 patients. This will not only help control the risk of transmission, but also ensure that transmission of the virus to healthcare workers is kept at a minimum. To date po, Mr. President, there have been 3,938 healthcare personnel infected by COVID. This constitutes 6% of the total cases in the country, which is twice the infection rate of 2 to 3% for healthcare workers in the Western Pacific region. Parang isinasabak po natin tuloy sila sa gera na walang bala. Kaya importante ho ang batas na ito. Pangatlo, Ginoong Pangulo, maraming salamat kay Chair Angara dahil pinrioritize din po ng committee na ito yung development of a clear reintegration program of our returning OFWs. Kasama na rin po yung AKAP program ng DOLE para sa mga OFWs sa listahan ng mga programa na dapat gawing prioridad sa mga realigned funds. We note that 500,000 affected OFWs have applied for AKAP, but the budget, despite the recent augmentation, only allows for the provision of assistance to 250,000 beneficiaries. Kaya makakatulong po ito, Ginoong Pangulo. We also like to point out yung syempre yung amendment po natin na 3 billion assistance for SUCs for investments in ICT infrastructure and appropriate equipment to implement flexible learning modalities. At kasama na din po yung binanggit ni Senate President Pro Tempore Ralph Recto, yung 1 billion assistance to TESDA as additional scholarship funds for retooling, retraining, and upskilling of displaced workers, including returning OFWs as well as provision of tools. Mr. President, it is not a secret to all of us that the education sector has also tremendously suffered from the pandemic. According to DepEd data, enrollment for school year 2020-2021 has already declined by 7 million in basic education. Meanwhile, according to PACU, or Philippine Association of Colleges and University, the enrollment in private education institutions is seen to decline by 50% or by 2 million. To exacerbate this further, the realignment of the budgets of DepEd, CHED, and TESDA and our SUCs for COVID-19 response was inevitably affected. And we thank Senator Pia also for being a champion of this, na magkaroon ng malaking pondo ang ating education institution. And I think yung recognizing, Mr. President, the key role of TESDA in COVID-19 recovery phase for funds for TESDA is 20 budget nila at our President himself the significant role of TESDA in helping our countrymen to succeed and manalo tayo dito sa COVID-19. Kapag po trabaho at edukasyon na ang naging biktima ng pandemya, hindi lang po mahihirapang huminga ang ating ekonomiya, baka maghingalo rin ang mga pangarap at pag-asang kinakapitan po ng ating mga kababayan. Hindi po tayo makakapayag na mangyari ito, kaya po ang Bayanihan Extension po ay magsisilbing armas natin, lalo na para protektahan ang mga trabaho at panatilihing bukas ang pintuan ng ating mga paaralan at sama-sama nating mapagtagumpayan ang salot na bumabalot sa ating bayan. Muli po, Ginoong Pangulo, maraming salamat at pagpalain tayong lahat ng ating Panginoong Diyos.
Mr.
Majority
President.
Yes, I'm sorry to Ma'am Grace. We have Senator Amy Marcos online. After that, we can recognize Mr. President, Senator Grace.
Senator Amy Marcos is recognized.
Ma'am, you are on mute, ma'am. Sorry.
Thank you very much, Mr. President, our Majority Leader, and Senator Grace. I vote with a deeply qualified assent, relying almost entirely on the government's guarantee that there will be much more to come for our harried and anxious populace. Certainly, as mentioned by Senator Recto, the scale of this Bayanihan Act is the smallest in the region. So minuscule, in fact, that it would be comical if the result was not potentially tragic. It is certainly too little too late if not to be followed by further protection, recovery, stimulus measures, as well as a vigorous and vibrant budget for 2021. Maski po para sa isang dakilang Ilocana, napakakuripot naman itong Bayanihan 2. Secondly, I would like to mention the scope of this Bayanihan, which has significantly reduced many of the beneficiaries intended by both the Senate and the lower house. Certainly, mandating displaced workers from both formal and informal sectors to secure a TIN during the pandemic will severely hamper the ability of government to deliver aid to those who need it most. Why has this social protection effort been converted into a tax identification and expansion scheme? I think it is neither apt nor warranted. Further, removing the OFWs from the bill ignores the unique and humongous problem associated with repatriating OFWs who have lost their work forevermore. There is a need to revisit that provision and restore them as a special sector. There is also a need to think about the cutoff intended in Section 4F number 1, given how different it is from our original for the SAP AICS. Rewording the section to better capture the cutoff would be a better option. Further, why are we not concerned about health security and instead remove the preference for local manufacturers? Already we saw the inability to procure, even with adequate funds, the much needed PPEs and our shocking inability to protect and defend our healthcare workers manifests itself in this disgraceful statistics that are the highest in the world. Further, the DOF removes the collateral exemption of MSME loans below 3 million pesos. Given the difficulties faced by our micro, small, and medium-scale industries, which are in fact the nation's largest employers, it is hoped that the relaxation of loan requirements for GOCCs as well as other collateral requirements will finally be given as the small business. Section of the proposed to into a mere 100 billion. As earlier stated by the Senate as well as our other colleagues, such is an inadmissible limitation. There are also some concerns, perhaps legal quibbling about sections 5 and 6, that these may in fact constitute riders to the bill, better encapsulated in the guide and fist bills already pending in both the lower and the upper house, and not appropriately included in the Bayanihan 2 program. Given the past problems associated with government equity infusion into private corporations, there is a need to study Section 5 or debate it thoroughly so that equity transfer is contained in a much better studied corporate vehicle encompassed in a coherent law. Section 5 contains provisions for the guidelines in the establishment of financial institution transfer corporations. Once again, this is of dubious inclusion in what should be a social protection bayanihan bill. Lastly, Section 13 limits the reportorial requirements of the executive from weekly to monthly. Given the current status of the pandemic and the importance of real-time data, such provision must be amended to retain the weekly report to Congress. Ngunit kung kakarampot man lamang ang maibibigay ngayon, papayag na po kami. Ngunit inaasahan ng todo-todo, may kasunod pa ito. Maraming pong salamat.
Senator Grace Poe, recognized.
Thank you, Mr. President. First of all, I'd like to thank the chair of the committee for accepting our amendments. This is not just about financial assistance for our countrymen, but it also provides more safeguards in terms of how we are going to disburse this. The Senate President mentioned in his speech yesterday that the focus of the Senate will include, among others, focus on the transport sector as well as digital connectivity. And I'm happy to note that part of the amendments that we submitted actually include these. First, for the transport sector, we are accommodating fuel vouchers and subsidies for those that are impacted in the transport sector. And the DOTR, being the one that's tasked to assess those that will be qualified for loans, are also directed that before they can guarantee to the land bank or the DBP, that the DBP and the land bank should be able to have a clear and proper business plan from those that are applying for a loan. And this will prevent, Mr. President, hopefully, those that are just seeking a loan so that eventually they can fold up their business and not provide the intended employment that we are trying to preserve. Next, there's also a mention when it comes to the entertainment industries that there should be some sort of subsidy for them. And I know that the Senate President has mentioned the importance of culture and the arts, that we may not lose our soul amidst this pandemic, aside from our physical and mental being. And lastly, but actually not the only other amendment that was accepted, but one that is quite notable, is that for the digital connectivity, we have also directed that the erection of cell towers not be hampered, and that this should actually be encouraged as part of the infrastructure program, so that the Bayanihan too will be able to support livelihood as well as educational endeavors that we are now observing in the new normal. So with that, to the chair of the committee, thank you very much, to the members of the committee, and of course to the Senate President. Thank you.
Thank you, Senator Poe. Senator Dick Gordon is raising his hand, Majority Leader.
Yes, Mr. President. After Senator Gordon, may we recognize also Senator Bong Revilla. Senator Gordon first, Mr. President.
Senator Gordon is recognized.
Thank you, Mr. President, and the Majority Floor Leader and my colleagues in the Congress. Good afternoon to everyone. This is essentially best efforts bill under the circumstances. We're putting in a substantial amount of money, but still considered to be so little for so great a task. It is just like that Andrew White painting where a man is looking at the boat in stormy seas and he tells the Lord, Lord, thy sea is so great and my craft so small. And that is why, Mr. President, it behooves all of us here to see to it that we cooperate with all the agencies to make sure that we are able to maintain a testing, first on testing, a testing system that really answers the need of the time. I have seen the Department of Health say PCR is the standard, gold standard for testing. And yet, I still see rapid testing that is being endorsed left and right because it's cheaper. I think we should do it right the first time, Mr. President. In fact, former Secretary Manolet Dairit, who worked in the World Health Organization and is now director of the Medical Center Manila in Pasig. What did he say? Former DOH Secretary Manuel Dairit on the utility of our RT-PCR and rapid antibody test in the laboratory diagnosis of COVID-19. Mr. President, digressing a bit, the diagnosis is the key. And let me just quote from him. Yung RT-PCR, yun ang test para mahuli mo yung magnanakaw habang naandun pa siya. Kasi yun ang ipapasa at makakahawa sa iba kung malaman natin na yung taong yun, dala-dala pa niya yung magnanakaw sa kanya. Yung kailangan mong i-isolate. Ngayon, kung gumawa tayo ng rapid antibody test, anong makukuha natin doon? Mga ebidensya lang na naandun o nanggaling na siya, dumaan na siya. Kaya minsan wala ka talaga makukuha ng ebidensya. To me, that is very succinctly described. And we have to abuse the people on what they have to do and also the government in terms of approaching this problem. Kung ang test natin PCR, even Senator Mix was worried about the test given to the Senate yesterday. It is indeed a PCR, but essentially it is really originally invented for tuberculosis. But nonetheless, it will pass muster. But still, nakita natin medyo nagkaroon siya ng positive. And last night, Senator Subiri went to the Red Cross. And this morning at 4 o'clock, I called him. Sabi ko, ang nakalagay sa Red Cross, and I really asked the pathologist kung tama yan and all the medtechs that were involved. Sabi nila tama yan. I don't know who is correct. But the point disabuse the mind of the public that there are panaceas. Even PCR, Mr. President, is not the perfect one. Right now, it can only have an accuracy of 70 to 30%. But it is the best among the field of people who are trying to provide us with the solution in terms of testing. The point is we have to drain the swamp. We have to isolate. And right now, when we isolate, Mr. President, lahat ng isolation systems natin overloaded. They're really overloaded. And many people are forced, for example, to go to the emergency wards. And when they are at the emergency wards, saksakan na ng gulo. The other thing that we have to understand is there are promises made. For example, we have to bring our people to the provinces. I agree with that. I've been advocating that for a long time. But at this point in time, when we look at the gymnasium or the arena, the baseball arena in Pasig or wherever it is, you see people side by side each other, waiting for their food, and waiting for their transportation. The other thing that shows inadequacy in terms of the game plan is that when they're brought to the provinces, they are immediately quarantined by some mayors and they're even retested again, which is downright unfair to all people who have already been tested here and who now have to suffer again another time in quarantine, extra money to be spent in the local governments when so far as the government is concerned, they have already been adequately tested. Hindi lang, kung sasabihin natin, madaling sabihin Secretary Duque is inadequate to the task. But let me just remind everybody, in America, they are really having problems. They have millions of people infected. Trump tried to take out Fauci, but he has not been able to do so. In Italy, in Spain, in Russia, everywhere, in India, Mr. President. Lahat yan, walang magaling. This is what we call in law as prima para. First time nagkaroon yan. So everybody's kakapa-kapa. And therefore, kailangan we must circle the wagons and constantly engage with each other so that we could find out how best we can do that. How can do the thing. The other thing is in terms of the stimulus project that we want to have, Mr. President. We must make sure that the priorities are clear. Up to now, the president did give SONA yesterday. He passed on certain things that he wants us to do. And I agree with some of them. But when you say distance learning, ano ba ang dapat na specification do sa distance learning? Are we going to give iPads to all the students who will be at home? Or are we going to do it through television? For example, elementary grades, gamitin natin yung naiwang facilities, ino-offer naman ng ABS-CBN or whoever wants to do it para magkaroon tayo ng distance learning sa school. I have grandchildren in Hong Kong and they're doing that right now. They have distance learning, they have education on TV, and in the case of India, they have telemedicine so that hindi na pupunta yung tao sa ER, and we try to do that here with DOH and with the Red Cross in the sense that we have a hotline 1180, 1158, where people can say, I'm feeling this, I'm feeling that. Then we recommend, if you have a home and you're not really having the symptoms yet, you can stay in your bedroom, you can have your own bathroom, have your own utensils and food, and you can stay there. That way, hindi na dadarang yung ating mga facilities ng gobyerno. Having said all that, Mr. President, I think we did a good job here, if I may say so. The bill has been approved. We need it right away. But the next step now is to make sure that our oversight covers the efficiency, covers the economics of making sure that we are able to do this right so that we don't have to throw good money after bad. Ang problema is, I think right now you should step back a little and really get together as a Senate and find out where are we really at right now. What do we really need in terms of the bill being passed? Where are they going to prioritize that? A lot of people ask me the question, were you satisfied? I wasn't quite satisfied with the speech of the president because I wanted a more specific master plan. But then who am I to say that? Because it's really kind of difficult to say there will be a master plan. But the point is, to me, the law that we just approved is a master plan. It is a roadmap upon which we can have a starting point, upon which we can exact accountability. You know, it is important, for example, na talaga nakikita natin may mga executives tayo, and yet the Department of Justice was not told about the deaths in Muntinlupa by Bucor. That is a violation of Department of Health regulations. When somebody is sick of COVID and you finding positive, you have to report to the Department of Health. That was not done. And then the Department of Justice had to say, what happened? Why did you not tell us? So again, the government is not only unhinged because we lose our concentration and we talk about another side issue. And this country, God forbid, is so full of going to the zigs and zags because we cannot focus. Because every time we focus, something pops up, investigate tayo dito, another thing pops up, investigate tayo doon. Unless we really start punishing people who are fooling around, this is not going to happen, Mr. President. And so, Mr. President, it is my hope and prayer, and I'd like to congratulate Sunny Angara, who, by the way, is from Accra, and so am I, and so is Bingbo Medjaldea, and so is Ted Locsin, and so is Frank Dillon. We ain't so bad, Mr. President, but I can tell you, I'm talking to Mr. President Soto, of course, I can tell you, Mr. President, that there's been an effort to try and be helpful to our country. And so today, Again, I try to exert that effort, and hopefully we can all agree on a common objective. Where there is no vision, people perish, and we have to find out what the vision of all these people on the front lines are doing. I am kind of antsy about just changing. Kung tatanungin niya, Manuel Diary would be a good replacement, but then he has to start all over again. The closer one is to knowledge, that is important. Finally, we need to have our scientists involved, Mr. President. For business, we need to involve other business to find out, not just the so-called powerful, or some people call derisively as oligarchs, but certainly the academe. Have the academe involved in the decision making involving business, or for that matter, involving COVID. If we do that, Mr. President, when we have more advisors and we have a decisive leader, I think we can finally do what we're supposed to do. Thank you, thank you very much, my colleagues and my friends. Mr. President, thank you, and may God protect our country at all times. Thank you.
Thank you, Senator Gordon. Majority Leader,
Senator Bong Revilla, Mr. President, would like to be recognized.
Senator Bong Revilla is recognized.
Thank you, Mr. President. I voted yes, given the prevailing circumstances and limited resources, because I know our kababayans need this measure. I'm sure they will appreciate this. Alam ko at dama po natin lahat ang kanilang pangangailangan. At sa akin pong palagay ay natugunan naman natin ito sa panukalang ito. And Mr. President, let me also extend my congratulations to Senator Angara for really working hard on this and for favorably considering all my amendments. So thank you. Thank you, Mr. President. That's all.
All right, Majority Leader.
Thank you, Mr. President. With that, Mr. President, we'll proceed with the other bills for third reading. Mr. President, I move that we approve on third reading House Bill number 244 and proceed with the roll call vote, Mr. President.
2444.
2444.
Yes, the Secretary, anyway, hearing no objection, the Secretary will read the title of the measure and conduct a roll call vote.
House Bill number 2444, an act providing for the establishment of Women's and Children's Hospital, the Municipality of Pamplona, in the province of Camarines Sur, the People, Women's and Children's Hospital, and appropriating funds therefore. Roll call vote, the Honorable Senators Angara, Binay, Cayetano, De Lima, De La Rosa, Trilon, Gatchalian, Gordon, Antiveros, Lacson, Lapid, Marcos, Pacquiao, Pangilinan, Pimentel III, Recto, Revilla, Tolentino, Villanueva, Villar,
Yes.
Senate President Soto III.
With 23 affirmative votes, no negative votes, no abstention, House Bill 2444 is approved on third reading. Majority
Mr.
Leader.
President, may we proceed with the next bill? Mr. President, I move to approve or vote on third reading House Bill number 6218 and proceed with the roll call vote.
Hearing no objection, the Secretary will proceed to read the title of the measure and conduct a roll call vote.
House Bill number 6218, an act expanding the services of the Malita District Hospital in Barangay Poblacion, Municipality of Malita, Province of Davao Occidental, renaming it as the Malita Women's and Children's Wellness Center. Roll call vote, the Honorable Senators Angara, Binay, Cayetano, De Lima, De La Rosa, Drilon, Gatchalian, Gordon, Antiveros, Lacson, Lapid, Marcos, Pacquiao, Pangilinan, Pimentel III, Recto, Revilla, Tolentino, Villanueva, Villar, Zubiri, Senate President Soto III.
Yes.
With 23 affirmative votes, no negative votes, no abstention, House Bill 6218 is approved on third reading. Majority
Mr.
Leader.
President, I move that we vote on third reading House Bill number 6035. I so move, Mr. President.
Hearing no objection, the Secretary will proceed with the reading of the title and conduct a roll call vote.
House Bill number 6035, an act increasing the bed capacity of the Western Visayas Medical Center, Mandurriao, Iloilo City from 425 beds to 700 beds, upgrading its professional healthcare services and facilities, authorizing the increase of its medical personnel and appropriating funds therefore. Roll call vote, the Honorable Senators Angara, Binay, Cayetano, De Lima, De La Rosa, Drilon, Gatchalian, Go, Gordon, Ontiveros, Lacson, Lapid, Marcos, Pacquiao, Pangilinan, Pimentel III, Po, Recto, Revilla, Tolentino, Villanueva, Villar, Zubiri, Senate President Soto III.
23 affirmative votes, no negative votes, no abstention. House Bill 6035 is approved on third reading.
Mr. President, I move that we approve on third reading House Bill number 6499. So moved, Mr. President.
The Secretary will proceed if there is no objection with the third reading of 6499 and conduct a roll call vote.
House Bill number 6499, an act increasing the bed capacity of the Quirino Memorial Medical Center in Quezon City, Metro Manila from 500 beds to 1,000 beds, upgrading its professional healthcare services and facilities, authorizing the increase of its medical personnel complement and appropriating funds therefor. Roll call vote, Honorable Senators Angara, Binay, Cayetano, De Lima, De La Rosa, Drilon, Gatchalian, Go, Gordon, Ontiveros, Lacson, Lapid, Marcos, Pacquiao, Pangilinan, Pimentel III, Po, Recto, Revilla, Tolentino, Villanueva, Villar, Zubiri, Senate President Soto III.
With 23 affirmative votes, no negative votes, no abstention, House Bill 6499 is approved on third reading. Majority Leader.
Thank you, Mr. President. Mr. President, I move that we approve on third reading House Bill number 6036. I so move, Mr. President.
Any objection? Hearing none, the Secretary will proceed with the reading of the title and conduct a roll call vote on 6036.
House Bill number 6036, an act increasing the bed capacity of the Las Piñas General Hospital and Satellite Trauma Center in Las Piñas City, Metro Manila, from 200 beds to 500 beds, upgrading its professional healthcare and services and facilities and appropriating funds therefor. Roll call vote, the Honorable Senators Angara, Binay, Cayetano, De Lima, De La Rosa, Drilon, Gatchalian, Go, Gordon, Ontiveros, Lacson, Lapid, Marcos, Pacquiao, Pangilinan, Pimentel III, Po, Recto, Revilla, Tolentino, Villanueva, Villar, Zubiri, Senate President Soto III.
With 23 affirmative votes, no negative votes, no abstention, House Bill 6036 is approved on third reading. Majority Leader.
Finally, Mr. President, I move that we approve on third reading House Bill number 6144, Mr. President. I so move.
Did you intentionally skip 6365? Or did I miss it?
We did not. Maybe I skipped it. Did we skip it, Mr. President? Please let me know.
I think so. Anyway, the motion is
Yes,
for
my apologies, Mr. President. We'll take it up.
it's all right. The 6144, hearing no objection, the Secretary will proceed with the reading of the title and conduct a roll call vote for 6144.
House Bill number 6144, an act increasing the bed capacity of the Cagayan Valley Medical Center, CVMC, in Tuguegarao City, Province of Cagayan, from 500 to 1,000 beds and appropriating funds therefor. Roll call vote, Honorable Senators Angara, Binay, Cayetano, De Lima, De La Rosa, Drilon, Gatchalian, Go, Gordon, Ontiveros, Lacson, Lapid, Marcos, Pacquiao, Pangilinan, Pimentel III, Po, Recto, Revilla, Tolentino, Villanueva, Villar, Zubiri, Senate President Soto III.
With 23 affirmative votes, no negative votes, no abstention, House Bill 6144 is approved on third reading.
Yes, and finally, Mr. President, this is from the island of Siargao in Surigao del Norte. I move that we approve on third reading House Bill number 6365.
Hearing no objection, the Secretary will proceed with the reading of the title and conduct a roll call vote.
House Bill number 6365, an act upgrading the Siargao District Hospital in the Municipality of Davao, Province of Surigao del Norte, into a Level 2 General Hospital to be known as the Siargao Island Medical Center, increasing its bed capacity, upgrading its professional healthcare services and facilities, authorizing the increase of its medical personnel and appropriating funds therefor. Roll call vote, the Honorable Senators Angara, Binay, Cayetano, De Lima, De La Rosa, Drilon, Gatchalian, Go, Gordon, Ontiveros, Lacson, Lapid, Marcos, Pacquiao, Pangilinan, Pimentel III, Po, Recto, Revilla, Tolentino, Villanueva, Villar, Zubiri, Senate President Soto III.
With 23 affirmative votes, no negative votes, no abstention, House Bill 6365 is approved on third reading.
Mr. President, we'd like to congratulate the chairperson, Senator Bongo, for working hard to get these measures passed. And special mention always in the SONA, Mr. President, by the President. And he would like to be recognized also to give his thanks to the body, Mr. President.
Senator Christopher Bongo is recognized.
Mr. President, I would like to express my gratitude to this August Chamber for supporting these measures that will improve and further capacitate some of our government hospitals. This health crisis has highlighted the need to address the lack of appropriate facilities and equipment in our government hospitals, most especially in the provinces. I particularly want to congratulate Senator Cynthia Villar for the increase in the bed capacity of Las Piñas General Hospital and Satellite Trauma Center, and Senator Amy Marcos for the increase in the bed capacity of Cagayan Valley Medical Center, and of course our big brother, Senator Frank Drilon, and small brother, Senator Mig Subiri, and to all my colleagues. And also Bato for always shouting yes. Thank you. Again, thank you, Mr. President.
All right, thank you, Majority Leader. The Senator Bongo is only a co-starring in the SONA. The starring role is the Minority Leader.
Yes, that's correct, Mr. President. And with that, Mr. President, yes.
Senator Lacson was pointing out the fact that we're very glad that you turned out to be negative.
Yes,
The Minority Leader stayed home for 4 months. The first time he came out is to whisper with you in the session hall. So we're happy with the result, Senator Subiri.
Thank you, Mr. President. And with your permission and the permission of my colleagues, maybe I be allowed to give a personal and collective privilege, Mr. President, avail of the personal and collective privilege.
Of course,
Thank
the
you.
Majority Leader is recognized.
Thank you, Mr. President. Mr. President, I rise on a personal and collective privilege. Yesterday, I was excited to start our second regular session of Congress and hear the SONA of our President. For those who are going to attend the SONA physically in the House of Representatives in the session hall, we're supposed to be tested for COVID-19 using a PCR or a swab test. We understand that the procedure was for the health, safety, and security of all those attending the SONA, particularly our President, Rodrigo Roa Duterte. So we came early in the Senate to have our swab test taken, of which the result could come out before the start of the State of the Nation address. Later in the day, Mr. President, I was approached by our Medical Bureau Director while about to finish lunch with some of our colleagues to inform me that the PCR test result conducted by the Lung Center of the Philippines. She informed me that my PCR test yielded a positive result. I was alarmed and I thought to myself, oh no, not again. I immediately informed our colleagues whom I was having lunch with for them to quarantine, as well as with my apologies. I had to apologize to the gentlemen and ladies who were with me during lunch. After informing them, I followed protocol, immediately headed home and decided to isolate myself and not attend the SONA physically anymore. On my way home, I was reminded by what happened to my dear colleague, our dear colleague, and a fellow COVID survivor, Senator Sani Angara. I remember that after his long quarantine in May and recovery period, he was swab tested as he was about to donate plasma in St. Luke's, and his test yielded positive as well for COVID-19. His doctors and some experts stated that this positive result could be attributed to the remnants of dead COVID-19 viruses in his body, which some PCR machines could not detect or distinguish if the COVID viruses, or if they can distinguish if the COVID viruses are dead or live ones. I know as well of other recovered patients who've had the same experience, particularly my friend Edgar Gatchalian, no relation to Sherwin Gatchalian, who had 16 swab tests imagine, 16 swab tests due to recurring false positives. So on my way home, I thought of having another confirmatory test. It's like getting a second opinion, so to speak. So I contacted our untiring Red Cross chair, no other than Senator Richard Gordon, and asked if we can have my confirmatory RT-PCR test with them. The results of the Red Cross PCR test on me was released this morning, and I'm happy to say I was COVID negative. Mr. President, I'm not an expert on this, and I don't want to pretend to be an expert. But to my understanding, the machine used by the Lung Center and perhaps many other DOH-run hospitals and laboratories conducting PCR COVID-19 tests, which is called the Gene Expert machine. I understand these machines were initially intended for TB, tuberculosis, and then were later retrofitted for COVID-19 PCR tests. I'm not quite sure of the sensitivity of the tests conducted by this machine, if they can distinguish dead cells from live ones. There is the idea of immunology, and the idea is that you can't catch the same strain of virus twice, especially at a short period of time. You may, of course, catch a different strain, and that's a possibility with the coronavirus, which is a large family of viruses that can cause everything from the common cold to COVID-19. But can we catch COVID-19 twice? When my test came out positive again yesterday, I immediately consulted with doctors and infectious disease experts who I've met throughout these 5 months of my ordeal and read up on stories of this. And what I'm coming to understand is that some RT-PCR tests detect not just active COVID-19 infection, but also fragments of the COVID-19 virus. South Korea's Center for Disease Control has been leading the scientific inquiry on this because they have encountered numerous cases of recovered individuals suddenly testing positive again after a few weeks later. They took 285 recovered positive cases and traced 790 of their contacts through contact tracing. And they concluded that no viral infection took place between the V-positives and their contacts. And the CDC also took respiratory samples from the V-positive individuals and tried to isolate the COVID-19 in cell culture. And the results came out negative, meaning the virus was no longer active as they were the fragments of the dead virus. Kaya happy po si Senator Bong Revilla dahil I accidentally sneezed on him. Naghatching po ako, nandyan siya sa harap ko at akala niya mamamatay na daw siya. Kaya wag po kayo mag-alala, Senator Bong. What we might take from South Korea's study is that a person may already be recovered but still tested positive. Experts from the University of Wisconsin School of Medicine and Public Health have also been studying this phenomenon and are coming out to the conclusion that recovered individuals may still possess residual genetic material from the broken down virus. This residue is no longer harmful or contagious. It's merely a trace of the virus. Unfortunately, a PCR test will not be able to distinguish between an active infection and a biological residue. With those facts, Mr. President, I will put a premium to the test conducted in Red Cross. Not because I have the utmost trust and confidence of our chairman, Senator Richard Gordon, but because Red Cross are using state-of-the-art machines. This is not to professionalism of our medical experts in our hospitals and government laboratories, but they must be given the necessary or right machines. No matter how good they are, but without state-of-the-art machines, their expertise could be put to naught. My point, Mr. President, is we are more than 4 months into this pandemic, and we should have perfected or at the very least attained a certain degree of expertise and accuracy on our testing capability. These facts and scenarios could have been factored in our testing protocols and triage screenings of patients. It could not be one machine or one system fits all. If our testing protocols are not accurate or suited to the condition of patients whether they are new infections or recovered patients, we may not be presenting a clear picture of the number of COVID cases. It could be higher, it could even be lower than the current figures due to false positive or false negative cases. The DOH should be more prudent in testing and releasing the results of recovered patients. Should they have their test for a certain period, say 2 to 3 months, or those repetitive tests? Or the question is, are those repetitive tests necessary for recovered patients if this will certainly turn out to be false positive? Ask Senator Sani Angara. He also got the scare of his life together with his family. Imagine the anxiety and mental anguish such a false positive result will bring to the recovered patient, his family, and the people he interacted with. I apologize as well to Senator Franklin Drilon. We had a nice, cozy talk right before I got my positive result, and I think I almost gave him a heart attack. My apologies to my minority floor leader. With what happened yesterday, I unintentionally caused anxiety and perhaps even panic to some of my colleagues and workers of government in the Senate. Not to mention the stress it caused my wife and children. My father and mother, I thought was going to have a heart attack last night from the stress that they found out that I was again positive. That's why the DOH must come out with the right protocols dealing with recovered patients so they won't be discriminated on in the future. I hope these issues could be thrashed out during the committee hearings. I understand several resolutions, Mr. President, were already filed relative to this issue. So let me repeat to my colleagues, my friends, and to the Filipino people, I am negative. My confirmatory test with the Philippine Red Cross has come out and shows I no longer have live RNA cells for COVID-19. Ibig po sabihin nito ay hindi na po ako nakakahawa at ligtas po ang mga recovered patients habang meron pa silang mga antibodies. Nevertheless, I will still quarantine myself and during the rudimentary period just to be sure. But I want to ensure everyone that I feel very well and healthy. I want to thank God and Mama Mary above all things, and I just want to thank each and everyone for the outpouring of support, for all the messages, prayers that have uplifted my spirit and kept me emotionally, physically, and spiritually strong during this new challenge of mine. And I apologize once again to all those I caused stress to due to this false positive. Paring Bong, okay na tayo, Paring Bong. So yun na po, Mr. President. Maraming pong salamat sa inyong lahat. Thank you.
Thank you also, Senator Bixabiri. Our prayers were answered. Praise the Lord. Praise God.
Thank you, Mr. President.
Negative. You just saved Senator Drilon 3,500 pesos because he was intending to have a swab test.
Mr. President, I think Senator Drilon would like to be recognized.
He's recognized. Senator Drilon, you are recognized.
Thank you very much, Mr. President. And let me place on record my appreciation for the call that the Senate President immediately made to me when news of Senator Subiri being positive came out. Deeply concerned that of all the senators, I was one most exposed to the majority leader since I was sitting right next to the podium. So we were concerned, Mr. President, that Senator, our majority leader, again got infected. But but this concern is not so much because we were concerned that we would have gotten it, because I was assured by the Senate President that we were having our mask all the time and the chances of our getting infected was very small. But nevertheless, we were worried about our majority leader. Natatakot po kami baka kung ano mangyari. But having made that of record, Mr. President, I just have one or two questions on the majority leader, if he may yield the floor.
Absolutely, Mr. President. And I thank you for the concern to our minority floor leader. Maraming salamat po, sir.
Yes, Mr. President. The majority leader said that he had lunch with 3 of our colleagues. Did I get that right, Mr. President?
Actually, not 3. They're present today. I had lunch with Senator Grace Poe, Senator Sani Angara, Senator Sherwin Gatchalian, Senator Joel Villanueva, and Senator Nancy Binay. And yes, those ladies and gentlemen.
Why was the Senate President and the Minority Leader not invited?
Buti na nga lang, you were not invited because I would have caused more undue stress to the both of you. No, actually, it was we decided we were thinking of where to go, and we just decided to just have lunch upstairs in a private room and just pass the time while waiting for the State of the Nation address. But yes, if we would have had a bigger venue, I would have invited everybody for lunch, Mr. President.
That just indicates, Mr. President, the kind of priorities which our majority leader would have insofar as the invitees to this lunch are concerned. But having said that, Mr. President, I just have one question. The good majority leader appeared to be very critical of our testing protocols. That with suddenly he found himself to be again positive of the virus when in fact it should not be the case. So may we know why this is so? We have been in this pandemic for the last 4 months. Up to now, the majority leader is complaining that the testing protocols are still much to be desired. And this has caused stress, understandably, to his family. It has caused stress to the Senate President and to me for not having, not knowing anything better. So may we have the opinion of the majority leader why these testing protocols have not come up to standard?
Well, Mr. President, to quote one of our colleagues who said that it might be a practical joke because a week before I was criticizing Secretary Duque, and so it might have been a practical joke on their part. But, I don't want to short guess our government institutions and employees. I'm sure well-meaning, those who tested me were well-meaning. As a matter of fact, I know they're experts at the lung center. It's just probably kakulangan ng siguro mekanismo, equipments. The best person to answer that is no other than Senator Richard Gordon because he's an expert when it comes to testing. I know they bought the best equipments from around the world on COVID specific. This is COVID-19 specific testing kits. Hindi po siya retrofitted. Hindi po siya para sa tuberculosis that was retrofitted for other viruses. And these were the ones that were used in Wuhan successfully, which were able to successfully also conduct testing in these other parts of China. So I do not want to guess, Mr. Minority Floor Leader, Mr. President. I'm going to move later that it will be referred to the proper committee so that we can actually get to the bottom of this, aside from the other issues that are hounding the Department of Health now, together with PhilHealth, which is going to be another action that we're going to take also in a little bit in the next few minutes. So, Mr. President, that's the situation. Although, people will say, and I've spoken to infectious disease experts, it's a new disease. So, nangangapa pa po tayo. It's only been around for the last 6 months. In the Philippines, really, it has only, pumutok lang po ito sa Pilipinas in the last 4 months. So, nangangapa pa yung ating mga medical experts. So, I don't blame any one of them. The mortality rate has gone down now because they know exactly now how to treat. As compared to the first few months of the pandemic, the mortality rate has gone down because in the initial months of the pandemic, we were as high as 6 to 7% mortality rate. Now we're down to about 2.5 to 3%. As a matter of fact, we're getting calls from our friends surviving the disease now. So because of the pagsasanay, meron na po silang best practices that they were able to do the last 4 to 5 months. So we're still trying to beat this disease, this virus. But you're absolutely correct. In my speech, Mr. Minority Floor Leader, Mr. President, there needs to be a review of protocols, particularly on recovered patients, Mr. Minority Floor Leader, Mr. President. Because, for example, myself, Sunny Angara, and Senator Coco Pimentel, I'm sure if we get tested again today with a machine that is a very sensitive one, they will detect us positive again. As I mentioned earlier, I have a friend, 16 swab tests, because he would be negative, then he would be tested positive again, and then negative, and then positive again. And you know what? The doctor just said, you have no symptoms, you're fine. And then that is the same also protocols they do in other countries. As a matter of fact, Mr. Armando Reza, he's the governor of the Red Cross in charge of testing, told me that they no longer test the workers within the testing centers who were positive, COVID positive already, that had returned to work. They no longer test them because they still come out positive once in a while on highly sensitive PCR testing machines. So, pero they're perfectly fine. In the antibody test, they have a number of antibodies. And in many studies, when you have the antibodies, Mr. President, you can no longer get reinfected as long as you have a high value of antibodies in your system. So, yun po, Mr. President, to our dear minority floor leader.
So the good majority leader is assuring all of his colleagues that indeed he can no longer transmit the virus that that has affected over 80,000 of our people right now. Is that a correct statement, sir?
Yes, from the studies that we've read, from the consultations I've done with infectious disease experts, and from my negative result in the Red Cross, that is correct, Your Honor.
Yeah, because
Thank you very much.
one of the issues being raised, one of the issues being raised on our campaign on against the virus is the failure of the Department of Health, particularly the IATF, to pursue with vigor the three T's: testing, tracking, and treatment. And I do not know if this is again an indication of our difficulty in coming up with the proper protocols insofar as testing is concerned. We keep on hearing that, and in fact, there is a running conflict of opinion as to whether we should do mass testing, but it would appear that there is basis for that. In any case, may we know from the good gentleman, having gone through this, having gone through another scary episode, what would he recommend to be done in order that we can have a more reliable testing protocol? As today, I'm sad to say, I think the opinion of many of us is that there's simply a failure to pursue correctly the three T's in this pandemic, which is testing, which is tracking, and which is treatment.
No, I completely agree with the minority floor leader, Mr. President. As a matter of fact, most of the testing being done today, Mr. President, is private sector run.
Yes.
It is private sector run, like the Philippine Red Cross is a private entity. St. Luke's, Cardinal Santos, Chinese General Hospital, even the LGUs, the LGU of Manila, the LGU of Marikina, I believe Sherwin Gatchalian's brother in Valenzuela also have their own testing centers already. So national government, I think, is still lacking in terms of being able to provide the mass testing needed, to be able to or the access needed to these testing centers. And you're absolutely correct, Mr. President. May kakulangan. They said that we were supposed to be testing 30,000 cases a day, but as of now, it's only less than 10,000. If I'm not mistaken, 10 to 11,000. Yes, that was the results from the interviews that I gathered in the news. It's only less than 10,000 to about 11 to 12,000 a day. So that is far from the 30,000 a day. Nice to have Vince Dizon here, because Vince, I believe, is the testing czar, if I'm not mistaken. He's the testing czar. So he'll be able to answer that. But in one interview that I read or heard, they're only doing about 10,000 tests a day. So far cry from what we're supposed to have Mr. President.
Yes, I'm surprised at that statement and information, because we recall that when we had the committee of the whole review of the performance, we distinctly recall Secretary Vince Dizon saying that our objective is to get to 50,000 a day, if I recall correctly. And at that time, our data indicated that upon admission of Secretary Dizon, we were only testing 10,000. From what you have made of record today,
That's right, Mr. President.
we have not
10,000.
improved since 3-4 months ago on that number of Filipinos being tested, because our objective, from what I understand, is to test about 2 million Filipinos. This is about 2% of our population. Senator Gordon has a higher figure, but just talking about 2 million Filipinos. If we are only testing 10,000 a day, when will we ever finish the 2 million Filipinos being tested?
No, I absolutely agree with you, Mr. President, with this minority floor leader. As a matter of fact, the throves of people that are in Rizal Coliseum, apparently not all of them have been tested. And they're going to the different provinces. You know, my father was so upset because he told me 3 months ago, Bukidnon only had 2 COVID patients, and they came from Davao. They came from the province of my good friend Bato and Bong. They attended the Sabong in Davao, and then they came home to Bukidnon, and they were the 2 COVID patients. But we were able to restrict their movement, contact tracing. It was fine. But once the LSIs, the locally stranded individuals, came home to the provinces, now we have we had about 70, and it's down to about 40 cases now. But yes, the testing had to be done here there in the province of Bukidnon by the local government unit using the swab test from the Northern Mindanao Medical Center. But dapat yan from point of origin, Mr. President, Minority Floor Leader. So those in the Rizal Memorial Complex, I think there are thousands of them there. There are probably tens of thousands there. They should already be given the test, and not rapid test, because the rapid test can give out false negatives very easily and false positives. Because to be able to have an IgM result or a positive result in the rapid test, you must be infected already with symptoms. So if you don't have symptoms, if you have mild and you're asymptomatic, which you're still a carrier, the rapid test kit cannot detect that or may not detect that. So napakadelikado, kaya maraming nakakalusot na positive once they reach to the provinces. So you're absolutely correct, and I'm hoping that my dear friend, and I know he's trying his best to do his job, and I know he's a very hardworking man. He's actually losing so much weight. Si Secretary Vince Dizon, I think he's trying his best, but I do not know where the bottleneck, Mr. President. No, I do not know where the bottleneck is on issue on testing.
You know, to be honest, Mr. Majority Leader, Mr. President, that figure of 10,000 or probably 11,000 daily that we are able to test is a big surprise to me. I was always under the impression that if you listen to the Secretary Rocco, we are nearing our targets, and bravo to the country, because we did not reach the number of infections which the UP, which University of the Philippines professors predicted. But here, I hope that you are wrong, Mr. Majority Leader.
Yes, I hope I'm wrong too, Mr. President. I hope I'm wrong.
Because for the sake of our country, if your information is correct, that we have only 10, 11,000 per day as our capacity to test, and most of them coming from the private sector, God help us. We will never get out of these lockdowns, repeated lockdowns, because we do not have an accurate data as to how many are positive. And this is something that really is worrisome. The continued resort to lockdowns has caused us so much suffering in terms of our economy. And the continuous lockdowns is, I would like to think, is because of lack of accurate information. And precisely where you are saying that we have only a capacity of testing 10, 11,000, I can assure you that resort to lockdown will be continuously made because we do not know exactly how many are infected. This is a sad state of our affairs, Mr. Majority Leader, and I do hope that this can be corrected. If this figure is correct, I hope that they can ramp up with our testing ability. You are correct that so many in the private sector already put up their own laboratories. But up to today, if we're only able to test 11,000, 12,000 at the most, then we are really in for some very difficult period. That is why yesterday we were hoping that the president would lay the path for us to follow, among which would have been: are we testing sufficiently? Are we tracking sufficiently? Are we treating sufficiently? Today, you just, Mr. Majority Leader, I must tell you, I am surprised at the level of our testing capacity, which has caused problems, including the problem that you encountered yesterday. And I'm sure it's not because of your lunch, where you did not invite us, but nevertheless, it's an issue that we must all address. Thank you, Mr. President, and thank you to our Majority Leader for making this clarification.
Thank you. Just, Mr. President, just for the record, to reply to Senator Dulon, actually the lunch was, the invitation to lunch was Senator Sonny Angara who invited. I just attended because I was going to go to the sauna, so I did not host any lunch. So it's your fellow fraternity brother who did not invite you. But, Mr. President, those who want to be recognized, Senator Pia Cayetano, Senator Bong Revilla. Senator Bong Revilla was first, Senator Cayetano, Senator Gordon, Senator Gatchalian, Mr. President.
All right, Senator.
And Senator Grace Poswell.
Recognized.
Mr. President, this is just in line with our last conversation about the lunch. Actually, Senator Angara just celebrated his birthday, and of course, he was getting much teasing from the group. That's why he was forced actually to host. So that was the story. In fact, I was offering to have it here in our home in Quezon City because it was halfway to the Batasan, but our homeowners association does not allow guests yet to come in. So that's the story behind that.
All right. So who's next?
Senator Bong Revilla, Mr. President.
Senator Bong Revilla.
Thank you, Mr. President. I just want to put on record na hindi ako natakot sa hatching na majority floor. No, hindi po ako tatablan yan. May gibat ako. Pinamana na sa akin ng tatay ko. Well, I just wish na sana po ay wala na yung COVID na yan, hindi tayo maapektuhan lahat. No? Talagang nakakatakot itong sakit na to. That's all, Mr. President. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. President. Mr. President, I truly treasure my friendship with Senator Bong Revilla. That's why the first person I thought of when I was told about my false positive result was Senator Bong Revilla. Sabi ko, naku, lalong magagalit ito sa akin. But totoo yung sinabi niya, Mr. President, alam nyo, kailangan talaga natin ng bakuna. Malapit na po ang bakuna. Everyone I've spoken to, especially the big pharma companies, they're going to be ready with a vaccine, hopefully by October, November, commercially available by December. Ang kailangan po natin, Mr. President, is that meron na pong government-to-government negotiations kasi baka maubusan po tayo ng bakuna. Ang alam ko po sa AstraZeneca, which is an Oxford British-made vaccine, I believe the United States has already ordered 100 million vials. And I believe also the governments of England, Great Britain, and Europe are also ordering from them. Baka mahuli po ang Pilipinas. So sana may ibang options po ang ating Pangulo, hindi lamang po yung Chinese vaccines. Sana po makakuha din po tayo sa ibang bansa ng bakuna Alam nyo na po. So sana it will be sooner rather than later. Mr. President, I believe Senator Pia would also like to be recognized. She might have information. Yes, Mr. President.
Senator Pia Cayetano is recognized.
Thank you, Majority Floor Leader and Mr. President. Actually, I do have information to share, but may I defer first to Senator Gordon as he's on the ground and I think his information is straight from his own experience. And then may I take the floor after Senator Gordon? Thank you.
All right. Senator Richard Gordon is recognized. You're on mute, Senator
Ninong,
Gordon.
you're on mute, Ninong. Yes.
Sorry, Mr. President. First, I'm not an expert. I just have a lot of experience in being exposed to the machinations or the goings on in the laboratory. You might want to make sure that it's safe. Second, I have not so good news, no, in terms of one. I just talked to Dr. Susie Mercado. To be sure, I would recommend to Senator Subiri that he take an ELISA test. And we have that in the, for those that we have what we call the convalescent plasma test to find out whether you have the antigens. And if you have a lot of IgG, you're okay. But if you have IgM, then you might
Mr.
have been
President,
infected.
maybe I can start. Maybe I can inform Senator Gordon that the PGH already has gotten my plasma. I have IgG, and I still have IgG until now with the IgG test I took yesterday. So I still have the antibodies. So I've done the test already, Mr. President. So I do have the antibodies and donated actually to the convalescent plasma bank.
Yes,
Thank you. Thank you.
we do have a convalescent plasma lab, and we're putting up another one in Cebu because although it's experimental, some of it has proven in good stead, no? Especially if you put it in early enough. The way it works is if you have had COVID and you're a survivor, you should be able to give some blood for convalescent plasma. I guess I just want to say it's not quite true that if you have had COVID, you're not going to get COVID again. You probably may get it in 6 months, and that's a study that I think in Lancet, that's what it says, that you can still get COVID. So we all have to be very careful and not be very overconfident in that respect. And that is why if we are, let's say, if we are symptomatic, then you would have to test, and you would have to, if you are positive, of course, you get quarantined. And even if you're asymptomatic, normally they recommend an 8-day quarantine and to be very safe, another 14-day quarantine. But since you said that I don't want to say this because I'm not an expert. I think you better have the experts check. Dr. Gapli Gaspi is a brain surgeon. I'm sure they have pathologists out there or scientists out there who can tell you whether you need another ELISA check. The important thing here is contact tracing. You may be negative or you may be positive, but you still have to do a lot of contact tracing. That's why in my earlier remarks on the bill that we just passed, I said that it is important that we are able to see our way through in making sure that we're all together in what kind of machines we're going to use. Because at times there are an awful lot of people, and I've been approached by so many people. But when I confirm, they are not really officially certified by their own government. That's why I don't just jump into the fray, but I always try to have an open mind just in case I have that. And to make a long story short, contact tracing will do will do us very, very well, because if you are able to, let's say, inflict COVID upon other people, then that will really show that we have a problem, that you have to be treated, and those guys have to be treated and quarantined. That's all I have to say, Mr. Chairman. I'm glad Mix is safe. When I was listening to you, I made sure that I called up our doctors at Red Cross. Susie Mercado is the wife of Orly Mercado, a former senator, former colleague, and she was in WHO, and she was also a member of the IFRC and the Philippine Red Cross. So we use her along with former Secretary Pao Obial, who's now working with the Red Cross as well as a full-time staff member who's in charge of all molecular laboratory. You cannot have enough experts. I mean, you can have an expert in Dr. Rubial or Dr. Mercado, but we still consult other people. So let's not treat this. Let's treat this disease very, very with a very, very healthy respect. I don't want to see my colleagues, especially mix, sick, and I don't think he'd be sick. And I think that certainly, I was talking to my good friend Senator Dillon kanina, sabi niya, "Oy, ikaw rin mag-ingat ka. We are all in the same boat." So I guess we'll all have to do that. Thank you, Mr. President.
All right, Senator
Thank you,
Pia.
Mr. President. Mr. President, before we recognize Senator Pia, we'd just like to thank, first of all, I'd like to thank our chairman of the Philippine Red Cross for the immediate and prompt action yesterday to get my confirmatory test. And yes, I do believe in erring in the side of caution, and that is why I'm doing the rudimentary 10-day isolation and quarantine. My family is still in Mindanao, so they're safe from me. I had them also tested. I also had them get the swab test just to be sure. And thank you, Mr. Chairman. Thank you to my dear colleague and my godfather.
Mr. President, just to give you an idea, I was exposed and I was really terrified that because my wife, as you know, Kate, is really immune compromised. I had practically 17 people, staff and security, all are in quarantine right now in QI and in some hotel, and even some people in the Red Cross. We've had 62 people affected, mostly medtechs. So this is a disease that we have to really, really respect. Don't take any chances. Stay home, and I'm glad that we're able to do this here in the Senate. It's a very unique way, and I think it also lessens the burden on us, especially our families and especially those who we come across with. Thank you very much for the vision of our Senate President for having been able to put this in action right away, and thank you all very much for taking care of yourselves. Because if you take care of yourselves, we're not going to infect anybody else. Thank you, sir. Thank you very much.
All right, Senator Gordon. Senator Pia Cayetano is recognized.
Mr. President. Thank you. What happened there? Okay, thank you, Mr. President. Majority Floor Leader, I'd like to join our colleagues in expressing our joy that you are healthy and well, and also to Senator Gordon that you stay safe because you're always on the go, and Secretary Vince Dizon has nothing but so much appreciation and respect for you and all the hard work you do, and thus the exposure that you also face every day. So on that note, I'd just like to share some figures because the Minority Floor Leader will recall that I think during the Committee of the Whole, I also intervened to try to help clarify the figures. So I'm very familiar with the figures that the Minority Floor Leader had mentioned. They're also the same figures that I remember. So I clarified that with Secretary. I clarify this actually almost every week with him. But before I go into that, just to pull out the statements that were made available to the public on July 22, I think. At that time, Secretary Vince said that they were at 28,000 daily. And the target was to hit 30,000 before the month ends. So he told me today that just by July 25, they hit 32,000 daily. So that is where they are now daily. So that's not a one-time hit. That's where they are daily at 30 plus thousand. And the goal was to hit 1 million by the end of July. So these are probably moving targets because I recognize, just like the Minority Floor Leader, you know, we were told earlier that we were going to target 10,000, after 10,000, 20,000, 50,000. I remember that. But this is where we are now. The target was to hit 1 million by end of July, and it has been hit. And I wish I could share this with you. I can just send it to your individual I can send it na lang on Viber pala. I don't have the, I am not yet savvy enough to share it without assistance on our screen. But I am looking now at the chart that shows that comparatively to our neighbors, South Korea has tested 1.5 million, and the Philippines is next. We have tested 1.3 million, followed by Malaysia at 900,000, then Japan at 789,000, then Indonesia at 704. So we're quite up there, given that we're next to South Korea. And in terms of daily COVID testing, we are at, as of the date that this was printed, we were at 32,000 daily, followed by Indonesia, which is at 17,000, which is half our number. And then Japan, which is also at 17,000. South Korea is at 11,000, and Malaysia is at 18,000. Sorry, 8,000. So Secretary Vince simply wanted us to put these numbers in perspective. They have been dealing with quite a lot of setbacks for a while. There even though the capacity to test was upgraded to 50,000, if I remember right. I think the minority floor leader will recall that that was the target given to us, and I think they've achieved that from what I recall. The capacity is there in terms of infra, in terms of the facilities, but there are other setbacks. At one point, it was supplies, and I think Senator Gordon can confirm that around June, July, the supplies arrived, so okay na. But then nagkaroon din ng maraming setback sa health workers. By batches, nagkakasakit. And I know from our stand as policymakers, it's easy for us to say, ba't nagkaganon? Wala bang backup plan? Kasi that's how I think also. Wala bang backup plan? Wala bang rotational yan? And I would like to think that this is something we can address. But I also know from other sources like Dr. Gap Legaspi that our health workers are really, really overworked. No? Hindi ganun kadaling sabihin na mag-recruit, palitan na yung 15 na napagod, palitan yung 15 na na-expose. So I think we really need collective effort to help them, because when it comes to human health resources, tao yan, no? So we have to figure out how we can make life better for them and help them do their job better, because just like the team of Senator Gordon, all overwork, pagod na pagod, and then na-expose, it's not an easy solution. So yun lang naman more or less yung report ni Secretary Vince Dizon that I wanted to share with you. Thank you.
Mr. President.
Thank you, Mr. President. I'd like to thank Senator Pia Cayetano. I don't really have the numbers with me, so I would be glad to be proven wrong, and I'm happy that I was proven wrong. So I'm happy that the numbers are higher, and we can't stress enough that the testing is very, very important.
That
Thank you.
3 million that Senator Cayetano has mentioned are all swab tests, not rapid tests.
That's what I'd like to also ask actually later on, if there are PCR tests, and how many percent would be from private institutions and how many percent would be from government centers. I think that would be a very good question to ask, Mr. President.
I can find out, and after the others ask their question, I might be able to give you an answer.
All right. So,
Sir,
Majority Leader.
Just a final word, Mr. President.
Senator Gordon.
I would like to counsel our colleagues and their staff that please be very careful when you send, let's say, your drivers out, because they may go somewhere and catch it and you don't know about it. And that once you know that one of your staff has it, that's contact tracing right away. You have to do contact tracing. In my case, I had to tell the whole condominium where I live, and we had to have all those who were sleeping with a couple of my drivers. There were about 6 of them. We ended up testing 22 in the basement, just to be sure na hindi tayo makakasakit sa ibang tao. It's also important that when you take your meals, or your help takes their meals, or the employees in your company take meals, they should do so in a safe way, because dun karamihan nagkakaroon ng transmission. Well, you know all the rest, sa supermarkets, sa malls, they get that. So try to be safe and look at all the safety measures. Nothing can be safer than if you wear your masks and you you keep washing your hands and carry a bottle of alcohol all the time, and to make sure that you're practicing all that, wearing a mask and washing your hands, and at the same time social distancing, Mr. President. Thank you, Mr. President.
Mr. President.
Yes, Senator Sherwin.
Yeah, just a quick question to our good majority floor. Since you are negative, can we be released from self-quarantine? Because Senator Nancy, Senator Joel, Senator Grace, and Senator Sani and I, we've been in quarantine since yesterday. And Senator Joel has been texting me earlier what's the advice of the doctor. But I just want to ask the good majority floor on his advice and feedback.
The problem is I'm not an authority to tell you to do so. It would be best to get that actual answer from
Senate
authority, a doctor, or maybe the Senate doctor. We have Doc Nat in the Senate. Maybe you can ask him. They asked for my results from the Red Cross. I had emailed to them the results, so they're studying it now. I will heed to the recommendation of Senator Gordon to take a convalescent plasma test to see about how high my antibodies still are. So I'm calling now the PGH to if I can visit and I can give my blood so that they can see my antibodies. But I would maybe defer to Doc Nat of our Senate Medical, Mr. President. I'm not sure. I wouldn't be able to be in any position to answer that, my colleagues. And I know the suffering of Senator Gatchalian. Him being a single man, it's very difficult. You know, people would go in and out of his house at night. So now he can't do that, Mr. President.
Mr. President, I am in constant touch with Dr. Season, and apparently because of this incident, the DOH will be releasing an official statement on what had happened. This is definitely a confusing event for us and probably for the entire nation, because in the morning you were positive, in the evening you were negative. And so it's really confusing, especially what's happening right now. So I think DOH in probably in a while will release an official statement to clarify all this and to enlighten us. So well, I am very happy that my compadre is negative, and I think we should avoid those lunches in the next few months. Thank you, Mr. President.
I actually genuinely enjoyed our lunch, actually. But Mr. President, it's a common occurrence, actually, just for the record for everyone. And Senator Sani knows this because we have several friends who are also recovered patients. Even my staff, si Boggs, who's my runner in the office, who was positive last month. And he still continues to be positive with no symptoms whatsoever in his tests. That's why he wants to have a Red Cross test, because he's been getting it from the barangay, and it's he doesn't know where the tests are being conducted or who's conducting the tests. But according to him, it's been 1 month. He has no symptoms. He's been isolated for 30 days together with his 2 sons that are still testing positive. So it's a common occurrence, Senator Gatchalian. And it's unfortunate for us, for recovered patients. You know why? Because it's going to be difficult for us to be honest about it, and I told my wife about it. It's going to be difficult for us to travel internationally. Why? Because imagine we need swab tests to travel internationally. And because we're recovered patients, it's a 50-50 chance na baka lumabas yung positive remnants of these dead cells. But actually, we don't have any more COVID-19. But yet, how do we do that now? So that's why I hope there are new protocols internationally as well as locally on the issue on recovered patients. There are new protocols. When I mean new protocols is when you're tested positive, there should be sort of like a retest or another test to actually look for live cells in your body to actually claim you're positive or not, which is going to be good for the DOH because they don't want to increase their numbers anyways. Diba? Buti yan, nawalan sila ng isang positive patient. Mas gusto yan mawala ng isang positive patient kaysa magkaroon ng dagdag na positive patient. Mr. President. But yes, I completely agree with the good Senator Gatchalian.
All right, we just received word from the doctor, the Senate doctor, Dr. Season, saying that he is in touch with the Department of Health. They are now going to release an official statement on the matter, and they're just waiting. They're just waiting for the signature of the secretary, who is in a meeting with IATF currently. All right.
Senator, Mr. President, I believe Senator Gordon and Senator Grace Poe would like to be recognized.
Senator Gordon is
Mr.
recognized.
President, I'm just talking on the phone with Susie Pineda Mercado, and the advice is the advice I gave to Senator Subiri, that he take an ELISA test. He can take it either at PGH or at the the Philippine Red Cross port area, because we have the convalescent plasma there. It takes a few hours to check. If you turn out positive there, then you'd have to confine yourself, and also sila Sherwin, sila Angara, sila Sani Angara, and all the others that you came in contact with, including my friend Senator Dulon, may have to confine himself for about 8 to 14 days. So it all depends on your ELISA test.
Okay, Mr. President, I will do that today, Mr. President. If I'm given permission to go to the Red Cross Testing Center in Manila Port Harbor, Mr. President, then I will go do so to get the ELISA test.
All right, thank you. If there is nothing else, we will
Mr. President, si Senator Poe would like to recognize.
Senator Grace Poe is recognized.
So, Mr. President, after Senator Poe.
Mr. President, actually, for Senator Miggs being worried about not passing the test for his travel, sa dami ng mga test mo, Senator Miggs, mamili ka na lang ng magandang result. Yun na lang gamitin mo. No, but seriously, from that get-together the last time, of course, we also wanted to comfort our colleague, Senator Joel, aside from the loss of 2 of his loved ones the past months. He's also been quite isolated. But other than that, it's quite a toll on me, actually, because I want to be obedient about the protocols. But yesterday was our 29th wedding anniversary. And when I got home, I had to be isolated from my husband and sleep in separate rooms during our 29th anniversary. So I think that he's actually quite happy. So that's all my manifestation, Mr. President.
All right.
My apologies to Mr. President. My apologies to Ma'am Grace on that.
No, not your fault. I'm just saying it just happened. So, and I deserted because I kind of forgot that it was our anniversary, and I joined you guys for lunch.
And I guarantee everyone that my exposure was very, very limited. As a matter of fact, I've isolated myself in our farm in Cagayan de Oro. Cagayan de Oro has only a total of 300. No, the whole Region 10, by the way, the whole Region 10 of Northern Mindanao has only 300 patients, COVID positive patients. So the risk of me getting COVID-19 there is how many percent? I don't know. Very, very small percentage. So, kaya pinagalitan pa ako ng tatay ko. Sabi niya, tignan mo, umuwi ka sa Manila, nagka-COVID ka tuloy. So, sa mga Mindanaoans like Senator Bato and the others from the provinces, they know what I'm talking about. So I really doubt, Mr. President, that I could have gotten exposed. And if I was exposed and I came home Sunday, it is impossible for me to have been positive right away the next day. So I will heed the suggestion of Senator Gordon. I will go today with the permission, of course, isolate myself. I'll drive on my own. I will go towards the port area Red Cross and get my ELISA test, and then we'll inform everyone in the Senate of its results immediately.
All right. Before Senator Pia Cayetano is given the floor, can you also kindly inform us, because the statistics are with Senator Cayetano. They keep on saying now it's 80,000 in the Philippines, in the entire country. Bakit? Mula noon hanggang ngayon, wala bang gumagaling?
No.
At 80,000 pa rin ang bilang nila.
I believe, Mr. President, I'm not an expert. Yeah, Mr. President, I'm not an expert.
Parang walang gumagaling. Nadagdag na nadagdag sa figures. So, what are the real active cases presently at ilan na yung gumaling?
Yes, Mr. President.
Yes.
Mr. President, I think the reports would indicate how many have recovered and how many are the net number of COVID patients still under treatment. So on a daily basis, we get the total of Filipinos affected. And in the same report, we get the number of recoveries, the number of deaths, and how many more are undergoing treatment. So there is a report, the daily report on that.
The reports also should contain the subtraction. So the total active cases is only so and so. Di ba? Dapat ganon.
Yes. That I saw
the layman, the layman or the common Filipino in the barangays are startled na dagdag ng dagdag 80,000 na. Nobody tells them na hindi na 80,000, ano lang, 40,000 na lang kasi marami nang gumaling. For example, now the way I look at it, it says 35,000. 55,000 lang ang active cases right now. Only 55,000.
Yes. Mr. President, in fact, in the latest report that we got, 4 p.m. today, there are 82,040 who are confirmed cases. And the next line says recovered, 26,446. So 82,040 minus 26,446, those are the active cases as 4 p.m. today.
Yes, correct. I understand. It would do well. The DOH will do well, or the IATF will do well by informing or by headlining the number of active cases. Ano, o baka naman sinasadya nila yun para nakakatakot pakinggan. 80,000 na, oh. Pero kung ang headline, active cases, 55,000. Oh, ganon. And then total of the entire country that have had is 82,000. Eh, hindi masyadong alarming. Pag sa nabasa mo lang, ilan na? Ganun eh, sa barangay, ganun ang usapan eh. They just answer the IATF. Thank you for... If there's nothing else, we give the floor to Senator Pia Cayetano.
Mr. President, to just add to, first of all, happy anniversary to Senator Grace. And happy birthday ulit kay Senator Angara na hindi pala kami inimbita dun sa kainan na yon. Pero noted. Nag-request ako ng cake. Pinadalan mo ko ng emoji ng cake. Anyway, but going back to the topic on hand, the question asked was what kind of tests were conducted in the numbers that I gave. And according to Secretary Vince Dizon, those are all PCR and Gen Expert lab-based tests. So lahat nung sinabi ko kanina na nasa 1 million plus tayo, those are all PCR and Gen Expert lab. And then the breakdown in terms of public and private participation in conducting those tests is 65% is public sector and around 35% is the private sector. But Secretary Vince also asked me to emphasize that what he believes is very crucial and dramatic in terms of expanding the coverage is the latest DOH memo that they have really been pushing for, is that we can now target test those who are not just symptomatic. If you will recall, quite a number of us mentioned this in our comments dun sa President's report na bakit yung symptomatic lang ang tinitest. So that was also something noted by IATF, and they requested na even the asymptomatics should be covered by the testing. And they now have subgroupings that cover many different sectors. It goes all the way to subgroup H, I believe, And these are basically to help the economy get back on its feet. So meron silang specific testing for tourism industry para makabalik ang tourism. Meron silang for public sector, public transportation sector. Very targeted yung kanilang testing ngayon, which would not have been possible before without without the memo. Just to add, another subgroup there are those who are patients of other illnesses. Kasi these are the people we've noticed na nagkaroon ng difficulty in accessing health services like yung mga dialysis patients, pregnant women, those undergoing chemotherapy. They're now also a specific class that should be allowed to get tested immediately. And so on and so forth. It's there in the files that I sent dun sa grupo ng majority, and I will send it separately to Senator Drilon, Senator Risa, and Senator Kiko. Enoch.
Yes. By the way, Senator Cayetano, you are in touch with Secretary Dizon, and he is well entrenched in the IATF. I was just wondering, can you please ask them why they have already allowed dermatologists to operate, but they have not allowed the nail and salon? Eh, dermatologist, diretso sa mukha, ang lapit-lapit eh. Eh, yung nails, ang layo nun ah. You know, the reason I ask is because one of my secretaries cannot walk anymore.
I will relay the Senate President's query.
All right, thank you.
Senator Antiveros, Mr. President, would like to be recognized. Senator Risa.
Mr. President.
Yeah, Senator Antiveros is recognized.
Salamat, Mr. President. Since we've been speaking about data, and alam naman po natin lahat, napaka-importante na kompleto at tama yung data, I'm actually looking at the DOH COVID-19 Case Bulletin number 135, data July 27, 2020. So ito po yung updated data nila as of yesterday. Total cases, which is the cumulative number of confirmed cases ever since nagsimula tayong mag-monitor last March. And this is the way, Mr. President, that all countries facing the pandemic are totaling their cases. It's really at 82,040. So, kumbaga, nagko-corroborate yung DOH at saka yung UP. So, total cases, 82,040. Within those 82,040, yung total active cases sa ngayon, so inawas yung deaths, inawas din po yung recoveries, total active cases as of yesterday, according to DOH, 53,649. So ibig sabihin po, out of the 82,040, the deaths are at 1,945 so far. The recoveries so far are at 26,446. So ito po yung official numbers from DOH as of yesterday, Mr. President. So even for purposes of comparison with other countries dito sa ating rehiyon at sa buong mundo, right now, so far, we have had 82,040 Filipinos na nagkaroon ng COVID-19. Salamat, Mr. President.
All right, so that means with the 1.3 million that have already tested, 1.2 plus million are negative. Correct. I wish they would start that way. Anyway, the other countries have been, especially in the United States, I have been hearing and reading comments in social media saying that the government is scaring them. Anyway,
Yes, Mr. President, just one last manifestation. Thank you. Since we're discussing this issue, there are many other issues related in relation to this. No, I just wanted to put on record, Mr. President, that today, that is correct, we roughly have, as of today, 83,000. Recovered 26,000. Now, having said that, the balance is your active cases. Of the active cases, what percent of them are in hospitals? Now, this is to take a look at our health infrastructure. No? Now, having said that, Mr. President, it would appear that based on the report of DOH today, 69% of our ICU beds are already occupied. 82% of our isolation beds are occupied. 89% of our ward beds are occupied. 46% of our ventilators are in use. Now, if UP is correct, and this will double by the end of August, meaning to say that we will probably have 140 to 150,000 by the end of August, hindi ba't mauubos na? Dapat paghandaan natin yung health infrastructure natin, yung our capacity to treat patients, the ICU beds, the isolation beds, the ward beds, and ventilators, Mr. President. Di ba? Okay, now, that is one thing I wanted to put on the record as well. And second, many of our health workers have been hit by the COVID as well, no? Infected, no? And from my sources, a lot of them pala, kaya tinamaan din ng COVID is because the PPEs that they are using are not up to standard. I hope this is corrected as well under Bayanihan too, that we are able to purchase the high quality standard PPEs for our health practitioners, no? And of course, it has to be adequate as well, no, for them, no? And finally, Mr. President, I don't know if Senator Pia or Senator Mix would answer this question, or maybe even Senator Dick Gordon. What is the status now of our local testing, local test kit that was invented in the Philippines, which apparently seems to be cheaper to use? Is that being utilized already today? Would anyone know?
Mr. President, to answer Senator Ralph Recto, I have no idea on the UP testing kits. I know that they are available. I know that they're gaining or collecting dust somewhere. So I hope that we utilize Filipino ingenuity. We have great scientists and doctors out there. So, but to be honest, Mr. President, I have no idea on the status of these UP testing kits. I hope they're utilized. I really, truly hope they're
Yeah,
utilized.
precisely. No? And the reason why I bring this out is that it should not be difficult to produce our own PPEs. It should not be difficult that we should be able to develop our own testing kits, not only for this pandemic, but even in the future, for future pandemics. No? So maybe at the appropriate time, maybe in Bayanihan 2 or maybe in another bill, we could capacitate ourselves in producing or manufacturing our own PPEs up to international standard, the highest quality possible, and that of testing kits at least, which should be made in the Philippines as well. So thank you very much, Mr. President.
All right. Perhaps the Bayanihan too, if it's possible, if it has been discussed either in the House or here in the Senate, we may include it in the bicameral conference committee, because we will definitely come up with one.
That is correct, Mr. President. Thank you.
64. So in
Mr.
other words,
President.
I will just await for the recommendation of Senator Angara, Senator Cayetano, on who should and when we can come up with the bicameral conference committee. Senator Cayetano is recognized.
Yes. Thank you, Mr. President. If you will recall, yesterday I updated you on the request we got from the garment sector, because they responded to the call of government to convert their manufacturing of garments into PPEs, and they are now ready, and they invested quite a lot in machineries. So they are now requesting for tax incentives and breaks. And I mentioned this to you, and you had mentioned to me that exactly that we can probably try to ihabol po natin sa BICAM. I've already brought it to the attention of Deputy Speaker El Rey Villafuerte, and I was just about to share a copy with our chairperson, Senator Angara, and our Senate Pro Temp, yung request nga po ng garment industry on that. and it's a nice thing to it's a pleasant news that you know that I can share with you that they stepped up and they are ready to roll it out, but they'd like some assistance in terms of tax. Thank you, Mr. President.
Yes, Mr. President, majority.
Yes, Mr. President, Senator Risa was raising her hand ahead, and then if it's okay with Senator Amy, she'll be next.
Senator Antiveros, and thereafter, Senator Marcos.
Thank you, Mr. President. Speaking about the Filipino-made and world-class test kits, just a couple of interesting facts for our discussion, which came out in a joint statement of the Senate minority last July 17th. Indeed, these world-class Philippine-made test kits would cost only 1,320 pesos, are gathering dust in laboratories due to the inaction of Health Secretary Francisco Duque III. So 1,320 peso PCR, PCR world-class test kits, Filipino-made, while the imported brands coming from China and Korea cost more than double at between 4,000 to 8,000 pesos and are entering the country without difficulty. So 1,320 peso PCR test kits gathering dust, 4,000 to 8,000 peso imported test kits entering the country without difficulty. A second interesting fact, Mr. President, those Filipino-made world-class PCR test kits have undergone trials and tests with an interim report showing that they have up to 93.96% sensitivity and up to 98.04% specificity at a confidence interval of 95%, thereby ranking among the world's best performing, better than some of the imported kits. And lastly, at this point, Mr. President, regarding the earlier discussion on the data in DOH's COVID-19 case bulletin number 136. This is already the latest, Mr. President. Just in the past few minutes na pinag-usapan natin ito, this is already dated today, July 28, 2020. So total cases, as the Senate President pro tempore said, approaching 84,000, exactly today at 83,673, with total active cases at 55,109. So this 55,109 net of COVID-19 deaths and recoveries. Related to the follow-up question of the Senate President earlier, so out of the 1.3 million reported tests, these figures now from DOH would mean that 1.2 million are negative. But would they indeed? Kasi nga po, and a colleague raised this question earlier, I forget who it was exactly, Mr. President, kailangan dun sa 1.3 million reported tests, i-distinguish natin alin yung PCR at saka alin yung rapid tests. And then based on the number of those tests which were PCR tests, dun natin pwedeng i-compare against that number itong 55,000 total active cases. Because lahat po sinasabi ng DOH, gold standard po yun talaga yung makakadiagnose sino yung may COVID-19 or sino yung positive at sino yung hindi. And so against that number, we take the 55,000.
Those are all PCR tests.
I see.
Yes,
Mr. President.
Rapid tests are not counted.
I see, Mr. President.
Yes.
So just for the record then, the data of DOH as of today, and then po yung tungkol din sa Filipino-made world-class PCR test kits na mas mura at napakataas ng level of confidence in comparison dun sa mas mahal na imported kits na ang dali-daling nakakapasok sa atin, samantala yung Filipino-made, yung UP-made sa pamumuno ni Dr. Destura ay yun na nga, gathering dust. Kung bakit ay siguro si Secretary Duque ang dapat sumagot. Salamat, Mr. President.
All right, Senator,
Yes, thank you very much, Mr. President, Majority Leader. Following the statement of Senator Cayetano, may I reiterate what I mentioned earlier in my explanation of vote, that in fact Section 4.0 of the Bayanihan 2 should be revisited precisely because of the efforts of local manufacturers to repurpose to the tune of $5 to $10 million apiece their factories in order to convert their export garments units into PPE and face mask and other medical supply units. Nakita naman po natin na nung nakaraang buwan, kahit may pera ka, nung nakaraang 2 buwan, kahit may pera ang Pilipinas na pambili, wala namang mabili. Kasi mismo yung Taiwan, China, Singapore at iba pa, ay talagang tinatago yung kanilang mga supplies para sa sarili nilang nagkakasakit. Pagkatapos nun, the next month, we saw that we were in competition with the US, Europe, and Japan, who were paying top dollar to these medical supplies exporting countries. It's not merely the dependence upon overseas supplies, but more importantly, the security of these healthcare supplies that we should really consider strategically important. So, eto nga, yun yung isa kong qualification sa Bayanihan 2 at nag-file na rin po ako ng bill na pandemic protection dahil not only have they repurposed, there were orders already filed, nakatenga yung mga orders doon sa mga factories. Hindi na lang yung tax incentive ang hinahabol, kundi yung ituloy na lang yung kontrata, nag-order, ngayon hindi makapag-deliver kasi sabi ng DBM at ng DOH, mas mura daw yung Chinese import kahit nakakontrata na ang Filipino produce. Hindi naman yata tama. Thank you po.
Right.
Thank you. Thank you, Mr. President.
Majority Leader. Yes.
Thank you, Mr. President.
Majority Leader, sorry.
Yes, Mr. President,
May I-
Senator Pia Cayetano would like to be recognized,
Yeah.
Mr. President.
Senator
Thank
Pia,
you.
is recognized.
Thank you, Mr. President. Actually, ako naman po, I'm just trying to share the information I have with all of us because I know we're all concerned, no? So, in no way am I trying to be a expert, no? I'm just sharing what I have para kung meron pa tayong further info and I can assist, I'm just more than happy. But I'd just like to share my experience regarding the UP test kits. Or in the early days, around March and April, when UP already declared that they are in the process of making those kits, I actually ordered in my personal capacity because we were all concerned that there was not enough test kits, etc. I ordered. And at that time, and then because I also work very closely with FDA, it's actually one of my laws, I was coordinating with them and it had to undergo the process. So ako mismo, I know this. It's not that na-prioritize naman yung mga international brands. In fact, I was one of those, and Senator Ping will recall when we discussed Bayanihan 1 on the floor, we wanted to ensure na bilisan ni FDA ang process, not just for international, but also for local. And obviously, if there's already international accreditation, what our Bayanihan 1 law states, if there is already accreditation by an FDA counterpart in a country with a recognized FDA system, kasi minsan yung malalaking country, hindi natin pa rin kinikilalang respectable, sorry to put it that way, no? But hindi pa rin yung parang class A yung kanilang FDA. Hindi natin ni-recognize yun. Nakalagay sa batas natin na those countries that have those FDAs na gano'n ng level, we will also expedite kasi pumasa na sa level nila. So those are the countries those are the kits that precisely under our law, we allowed. So hindi naman sa pinapanigan natin yung international, but it's because they were accredited by the FDAs in those countries. And meanwhile, tinutukan ko din yung sa UP kasi taga-UP ako. I'm always proud of UP. But even the UP, kausap namin directly because I was going to purchase directly for Taguig. And they had to undergo the process. They accepted that reality that they had to undergo that process. So where they are now, I will simply forward to you the clarificatory statement by Dr. Raul Destora and Manila Health Tech, no, wherein they explain na they went through the process and after the process has been completed, I think okay na lahat. That's not coming from me. That's an official statement that is of public info. I'll just share that with all of you. So it appears na tapos na yung prosesong yon at pwede na. Yun ang pagkaintindi ko. Yun lang.
Thank you. Mr. President, just one last point on this issue, on the local test kit. Then, kung tapos na yung proseso, and if we can scale up the production or manufacturing of these local test kits, shouldn't we prioritize that under Bayanihan too, including our local manufactured PPE, and ensure for the PPE that we have standard testing for quality PPEs? Dahil like I said, maraming nagrereklamo that the PPE that they are using are substandard. And that is one of the reasons why many of our health frontliners are getting sick or getting infected by COVID. No? So we must upgrade our standard, repurpose our industries, produce our own PPEs, produce our own testing kits moving forward. No? In fact, I'd go even further. There is talk about the possibility of having a vaccine. Now, in developing the vaccine is difficult at the moment for the Philippines, but the manufacturing of the vaccine might not be too difficult. If we can get a license from whoever develops that and manufacture that locally, remember we have 110 million market. Maybe we can produce that also here so that we can create jobs. So I just wanted to make that manifestation also. Thank you very much.
Mr.
Yes,
Senator Leader.
Cayetano.
Yes, Senator.
Yeah, what I recall also, aside from the process that had to be validated, and all the scientists naman will tell you na wag naman natin shortcutin yung validation, di ba? So even though I am also in a hurry, I try to hold back because I know that these validation processes are very important. And in as much as we support yung sariling atin, they have to still go through that process. So what I understand now is that it's in the news then that DOH has already given
Boss,
the go
sorry,
signal.
napindot ko. Ano yun? Ano yun,
But
boss?
they also have limited capacity in terms of supply. So that is consistent with Senator Ralph's observation that we have our local suppliers. It's actually also what Senator Amy was saying, diba? What are we going to do now? Diba? Those suppliers are there. So limited sila. So what can government do? To put it in a lighter, to compare it in a lighter, by a lighter analogy, the K-drama that everybody's watching, that's supported by the Korean government, no? That's the K-drama that everybody, including Filipinos, are crazy about. Government supports that. So more reason that government should be supporting these local suppliers of ours to help them become competitive. I guess it's not a sufficient reason. It is not a sufficient reason to say, di sila competitive, mas mahal, wag tayong bumili sa kanila. Kawawa naman. Tayong nag-insist na silang gumawa nun, tapos hindi nga bibilhin. So that is really, Senator Ralph, baka we can really include in the BICAM some provisions to support these local suppliers.
Yes, that is the position that I have, and I'm glad that you share that position as well. Thank you very much.
Yes, to add to the discussion of Senator Recto and Senator Pia Cayetano, I truly believe that we should already start promoting local, whether it's local travel. I don't mind because of my positive, false positive test. I'll just go to Ilocos Norte of Senator Amy, beautiful Ilocos Norte, or the beaches of Aurora of Senator Angara, the very good durian of Senator Bato de la Rosa, and Panay Island of Senator Risa and Senator Frank Dulon, beautiful Panay Island. We could just travel local and also buy local as well. So tama po yung sinasabi ni Senator Recto and Senator Pia that if we can promote locally, these locally manufactured goods and services as well as products. Yes, for the Senate President, while he's in a liquidity break, Mr. President, Senator Sonny Angara, please go ahead, Senator Sonny.
Thanks, Majority Leader. I support everything that's been said about procuring locally, and I'd like to state that there is a provision already in the third reading report. It's on Section 3, which says that we should endeavor to use local products. It's there.
Yeah, maybe we
It's
can, with the permission of the Senate President and the Majority
Yes,
Leader.
Senator
Maybe-
Rick, go ahead.
Thank you. Maybe we should mandate and not only endeavor at the appropriate time, Mr. Chairman, Mr. President. Thank you.
Yeah, certainly,
Possibly.
certainly.
Possibly during the BICAM. Yes. And
Here, can I just read it for the information of the body, Mr. President? It says, provided that to ensure adequate and responsive supply of critical medical products, the government shall promote and encourage the local manufacturer of such products, and whenever locally available, procure from manufacturers and suppliers in the Philippines. For this purpose, the DTI shall issue a certification that the products, materials, or supplies are produced, made, or manufactured in the Philippines, provided further that other qualifications and documentary requirements for local manufacturers and suppliers shall be prioritized and expedited by the DOH, FDA, and other concerned departments and agencies.
Majority Leader, Senator Angara, please.
Yes, Senator Marcos, Mr. President, would like to be recognized.
Yes, I was just going to ask from our chairman, Senator Angara. In my copy in section 4O, wala pa yun eh. Bago ba yan?
No, it's in the third reading copy.
That's right. So section 4O still refers to competitive bidding as opposed to preference for local manufacture.
I am looking at the second reading approved copy. This is on page 10. Page 10, line 20, Your Honor.
Okay.
Yeah.
All right. I have it here as section 4O, and it says competitive bidding. I'd appreciate.
I remember you amended it to a certain extent to ensure that
that was my amendment in
it's a
the
level
first
playing
place.
field. I remember that. I
That's
remember your
correct.
contribution there.
That's right. Thank you very much, Chair Angara. But I will double check because I don't seem to see it even in the last version.
I-plancha na lang natin sa BICAM so it corresponds to what we agreed upon.
Thank you very much.
Salamat po.
All right, in that case, Majority Leader, we are ready to designate
Yes,
the
Mr.
members
President.
of the Bicameral Conference Committee.
Mr. President, with the permission lang of the body, I move that we refer my speech to the Committee on Health, Mr. President. Senator Go.
Any objection? Hearing none, the privilege speech is hereby, including the succeeding interpolations, are hereby referred to the Committee on Health.
Thank you, Mr. President. Mr. President, I move that we elect your members of the Bicameral Conference Committee, Mr. President, on the Bayanihan 2 measure.
All right, unless the chairman, Senator, we designate Senator Sani Angara, of course, as chair, and then Senator Pia Cayetano, Senator Franklin Rilon, and say two others who the Senate chairman of Committee on Finance would like to nominate.
I believe he has a list, Mr. President. May we ask Senator Angara to give the list, to name the list, Mr. President.
Read into the records the list that the chair will designate.
Yes, Your Honor, I texted this to the Majority Leader earlier. Thank you. Well, yes, myself as chairman, the Majority Leader, Senator Pia, Senator Ralph, Senator Aimee, Senator Grace Po, and Senator Drilon for the minority, Your Honor, if that's all right.
Senator Grace Po wanted to be included. Seven members.
Yes, odd number to break a tie, Mr. President.
The enumerated names by the chairman of the Committee on Finance are hereby designated as members of the Bicameral Conference Committee for the 1564, Senate Bill 1564. Majority Leader.
Thank you, Mr. President. I just wanted to ask the Senator Sani Angara, what were the names again, just for the record, Mr. President?
Yeah, to repeat, Mr. President, I'm just looking for the text. 1 second.
Yeah.
It's so Senators Angara, Zubiri, Cayetano, Recto, Marcos, Po, and Drilon.
Correct.
Thank you, Mr. President. I got the list. Thank you, Mr. President. Before, just another matter, very important matter, the membership of the proposed Joint Congressional Oversight Committee on Cooperatives. This is the JCOCC. On the part of the Senate, Mr. President, may we elect the members so that we can already conduct our joint House and Senate hearings, Mr. President.
Would you like to
Yes.
nominate the members?
Yes, Mr. President. I as chair, Senator Mig Zubiri as chair of the JCOCC, together with Senator Swing Gatchalian, Senator Richard Gordon, Senator Lito Lapid, and Senator Risa Antiveros, Mr. President.
If there is no objection, the presiding officer hereby designates the so enumerated names.
Thank you, Mr. President. We have one very important concern, one last, adoption of resolutions. And I would really like to do this, Mr. President, with the permission of the body. Before we tackle the reference of business, we have very long reference of business, Mr.
With your
President.
indulgence, the
Yes.
reference of business is very, very thick. So if with your indulgence, let's do what you want to do on that particular motion, and perhaps do the reference of business tomorrow if you will not.
Yes, Mr. President, I would like that. That would be very good, Mr. President. That would be excellent. As a matter of fact, since tomorrow will be a lighter day, I think we can do so tomorrow, Mr. President. I totally agree with you. With that, Mr. President, I move with the permission of the body, that to consider proposed Senate Resolution number 475, Mr. President. I so move.
Any objection? Hearing none, consideration is in order.
Mr. President, I would like to ask the Secretary to read the title of the measure.
Secretary will read the title of the proposed resolution action.
Resolution calling for the constitution of the Senate Committee of the Whole to conduct an inquiry in aid of legislation on the alleged rampant corruption, incompetence, and inefficiency in the Philippine Health Insurance Corporation PhilHealth amidst the COVID-19 pandemic that may lead to the financial collapse of the institution to the prejudice of the Filipino people.
The Majority Leader.
Thank you, Mr. President. Mr. President, I believe this is a resolution sponsored by our distinguished Senate President, together with Senator Panfilo Lacson.
Yes,
Mr.
we would like
President,
to appeal to the body that we adopt the proposed resolution.
thank you, Mr. President. I just believe that Senator Gordon earlier manifested to me that he wanted to just make a few remarks. May we just ask if Senator Gordon is still online?
Yes.
Yes, I believe he's online, Mr. President. May we recognize Senator Gordon?
Senator Richard Gordon is recognized.
Well, thank you very much, Mr. President and Majority Floor Leader. Normally, an investigation like this would go to the Blue Ribbon Committee, Mr. President, but I have no objection to this. Although, just let me remind the body that we do have an active investigation going on the PhilHealth, but I don't mind if the Senate Committee as a whole will investigate this. I don't mind, because I'm really saddled with all sorts of things right now, and besides, PhilHealth has some other problems with the Red Cross, and I don't want to get that in the way.
Thank you, Mr.
With
President.
gratitude to the chairman of the Committee on Blue Ribbon, who we know his hands are full because of so many investigations ongoing.
Thank you, Mr. President.
Leader.
Thank you, Mr. President. It also gives us an opportunity, everyone every member of the Senate to participate and not necessarily being a member of the Blue Ribbon Committee. So we thank our Chairman Richard Gordon, for being very gracious.
Yeah.
Mr.
Majority Leader,
President?
Mr. President, may I also
Yes,
request to be a co-author of this resolution?
Yes, Senator Ralph Recto is hereby made a co-author of the resolution.
Thank you
Mr.
very
President,
much.
Here, I'd like to be a co-author also.
Same as this.
may he also be a co-author, Mr. President? You have Senator Villanueva, Senator Sani, Senator Aimee,
Angara,
and
Senator
myself,
and Senator Villanueva.
Pangilinan as well,
Revilla also.
Revilla, Senator Kiko, Senator Cayetano, Senator Nancy. I believe all members that are present on the screen, Mr. President, including Senator Rocco de Rosa.
That's mine.
Senator Dulong.
Ala, sorry.
All the named members of the Senate who are here, who have been mentioned and are present, are hereby made co-authors of Senate Resolution 475.
Mr. President,
Thank you, Mr. President. Mr. President, Senator Gordon would like to be recognized.
I would love to be a co-author, but like I said in my preliminary remarks, we have had dealings with PhilHealth on the COVID issue, and I wouldn't want it said that I'm co-authoring something to investigate them. Although I agree with
We completely understand.
out of Delicadeza, Mr. President, I don't want to be a co-author or be the chairman of the investigating committee, Mr. President.
Correct.
So,
Thank you
Mr.
very much.
And so long, Mr. President, that this
We completely understand the predicament of the gentleman.
yes, Mr. President. At the same time, I hope that this should not be a precedent. It's only under these very, very stringent times that we're agreeing because we have committees here and they should be the ones really investigating. But for this matter, which is of a special nature, Mr. President, that involves ethical considerations, I am agreeing to this, Mr. President. Thank you very much.
Yes, we take note of that.
Senator Cayetano would like to be recognized, Mr. President.
Senator Pia Cayetano is recognized.
Mr. President. Mr. President, one option for me would be to request to amend the resolution, but I won't do that anymore. I'll just put it on record because the amendment I would have made was simply to state that as the representative of the Senate who consolidated all the senators' comments to the President's report, and I think that was 14 reports, 14 comments that we submitted. There were a number of comments we forwarded to the Office of the President already asking PhilHealth to explain a lot of how they went about their reimbursements, how did they choose the hospitals that they were reimbursing, etc., etc. So the point I simply wanted to say is it is in that connection that I would like to be a co-author because it was part of my job to pose these questions, and we never got a response to those questions, Mr. President.
Very good. We place that on record, Senator Pia Cayetano. Thank you very much.
Mr. Chairman.
And now,
Mr. President.
Senator Pangilinan is recognized.
Yes, thank you, Mr. President. Mr. President, just a manifestation. We filed a similar resolution seeking for an investigation on the PhilHealth controversies. But as I understand it, the resolution is going to be referred during the referral of business tomorrow.
Therefore,
so just
yes. Therefore, we will refer it to the committee of the whole.
Yes, thank you, Mr. President. Thank you,
Mr. President. Thank you, Mr. President. Mr. President, may I just be allowed to recognize all those who want to be authored? For the record, just to be sure, we have Senators Bato de la Rosa, Senator Cynthia Villar, Senator Dick Gordon, not Senator Gordon, Senator Frank Drilon, Senator Joel Villanueva, Senator Kiko Pangilinan, Senator Nancy Binay, Senator Pia Cayetano, Senator Ralph Recto, Senator Sunny Angara, Senator Amy Marcos, Senator Risa Antiveros, and Senator Bong Revilla, and myself, Mr. President, for the record.
All right, for the record, we place that on record. And then, all right, let's take the action. Let's
yes,
do
Mr. President.
the matter. Letter to read into the records coming from the Department of Health.
Yes, Mr. President, there being no other member who wishes to interpolate and amend the measure, Mr. President, I move that we adopt the proposed Senate Resolution number 475.
Any objection? Hearing none, 475 is hereby adopted.
Mr. President, with that adoption...
with that, the Committee of the Whole is hereby constituted.
Yes, for the record, Mr. President, we just like to say that the Senate, the Committee of the Whole will be headed by our distinguished Senate President, Senator Vicente Soto III.
Yes, we will be designating co-chairs and acting vice chairs at the proper time. But in the meantime, we would like to place on record a letter that I have just received just a few minutes ago from the Department of Health, directed to the Senate President. And it is signed by the Secretary of Health, Francisco Duque III. And this is, he says, reference to the request for recommendations to the Senate of the Philippines after Senator Juan Miguel Zubiri tested positive through GeneX last July 26 after consulting with the department's technical advisory group for COVID-19. The following are advised. Number one, it should be reiterated that polymerase chain reaction is very sensitive and can detect the virus and virus genetic materials remnants. It's also best used for symptomatic patients. Due to the test's sensitivity, the PCR result of Senator Subiri can be remnant of the virus. It can also be a false positive result and or cross-contamination. There are two other paragraphs here that I will submit into the records, but the important thing is, I think, is number 3. Number 3 says, those who are close contacts of the senator need not necessarily be quarantined, since this is most likely not a true infection. As a layer of safety, close contacts may be tested using PCR 5 days after their last contact with senator, but it is not necessary. Therefore, all right, just 2 or 3 more sentences, but I think the most important point is that we'll give the Senator Zubiri a copy of the letter from Secretary Duque. So, Senator Dillon, you have no problem.
Mr. President, thank you very much. You have elated me to. I'm elated today and very, very happy with the letter of Secretary Duque. I appreciate that. But nevertheless, I'm still going after this to take my ELISA test just to be absolutely sure. It's arranged already at the Red Cross port area, Mr. President, just to be absolutely sure and to assure my colleagues that no harm will come to them.
All right.
They will be as healthy as ever.
We hereby direct the office, the Secretariat, to post this in the Facebook page of the Senate, the official website. Sorry, not Facebook page, the official website of the Senate. And then perhaps, Mr. Majority Leader, while you are elated, we would like to entertain a motion to approve the journal.
Yes, Mr. President. Finally, before we suspend session, Mr. President, I move that we dispense with the reading of the journal of the first session, Monday, July 27, 2020, and move for its approval, Mr. President.
Any objection? Hearing none. Motion is approved. The journal is approved.
I think that letter, Mr. President, will delight Senator Grace Poe, because they will be reunited with her husband tonight for their related anniversary date.
We'll ask the Secretariat to also send a Viber message to Grace Poe and all the other members who were in close contact with Senator Subiri.
Thank you, Mr. President. And for Senator Joel Villanueva, he may now return to his family in Bulacan, Mr. President. I'm so happy for him.
Yes, thank you.
Yes, thank you. With that, Mr. President, thank you. With that, Mr. President, I move to suspend session till 3 o'clock tomorrow afternoon, Wednesday, July 28, Mr. President. 29, rather.
Sir. There is someone seeking the floor before we act on the motion?
Oh yeah. Would anyone want to stop the suspension? Wala naman po, sir. Wala naman po, sir, Mr. President.
All right. Any objection? Hearing none, the session is suspended until 3 o'clock in the afternoon of Wednesday, July 28, 2020.
Thank you very much, Mr. President.
Thank you.
July 29, I'm sorry. July 29.